Hi, this is Kyle Higgins, and you're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
Coming up on MWIRE Weekly, we discuss the new Ant-Man casting, Batman vs. Superman delays, the Oscar nominations, and it's finally here, our top 10 movies of the year. All that and more coming up on MWIRE Weekly. Hello, and welcome to MWIRE Weekly, the movie podcast dedicated to the movie week that was. I am one of your hosts, Dan Clark, and joining me today, as always, is Kevin Optimus. Hello, how's it going, man?
It's going fantastic. A major week for us here. A lot of stuff to cover.
Yes, yeah, it's a busy week in a lot of different areas. And for those joining us for the first time or those return visitors, we are MWIRE Weekly, and what we do is we start each podcast with a look at what we've been watching recently. We'll move into the movie news, and then we'll touch upon a main attraction. We actually have a double feature main attraction for this week, as we'll be talking about the Oscar nominations and our own personal top 10 movies of the year. And then I'll finish off with our credit conversation and a look at the Blu-ray and DVD releases coming up for this next week. I unfortunately had a busy week, so I can't get a chance to really watch any movie per se. The only thing I really watched was I got to see Disney on Ice. I didn't go alone. I wasn't that creepy guy that went to Disney on Ice by themselves. I took my wife and I took our nieces and nephew, 4 kids. So it was an adventure. But I will say this about that. About Disney on Ice. If you've ever gone or haven't ever gone, I was impressed by the production value, and you can just see Disney machine working at full force. So it was kind of cool. But how about you, Kevin? Have you been able to watch anything this past week?
Yeah, I guess I made up. I watched your share too. I saw 7 films this last week.
Oh wow, jeez.
So yeah, I guess it was a week which is weird because I got lots of other things going on with work and different situations that I felt like I didn't have as much time, but I somehow managed to still watch 7 films and a couple football games. So started off. My roommate and I actually went through both his and my DVD collection, and we made a stack that's actually bookended on my coffee table now. I think it's around 30 or 40 films that one of the two of us hadn't seen that the other one thought that we should see. So that is going to be on my coffee table, and we'll one by one remove them until we've seen them all. And it started off with one of the ones that he wanted me to see that I'd never seen before. And I don't know if you're familiar with this film or not, but it's called The Spirit from 2008.
Yeah, I actually saw that in theaters.
So he's a graduated graphic design. He draws, he writes comics, he just got his first graphic design gig and whatever. So he really likes this film. Obviously, it's directed by, I believe, by a comic book writer. Frank Miller, maybe is his name. So he is a big fan of this film. I got to say, I appreciate some of what they were doing. I appreciate the kind of the clever make fun of yourself type thing. Thought there was a couple moments that were pretty slow towards the middle, but it's definitely interesting. Some interesting performance by Samuel L. Jackson, among others. But if you like comic book type of movies and superhero type movies and stuff like that, you should watch it just to get a kick out of it. Reminiscent a little bit of like the Dick Tracy movie from the 90s, I believe it was 90s, in a way. I don't know, what did you think of that film when you saw it in the theater?
It's been a while, but I remember not really being a fan of it. like you said, on an artistic standpoint, I could see why you would don't enjoy it at that end, because it did look really great. It had a similar style to that of like Sin City, where it felt, everything felt like a comic book. But I just remember being really goofy and not really digging it. But it's honestly been, I don't even know when that came out. I think
2008.
2008. So since I've seen it. So, but I remember not being a fan at the time.
As far as then I saw a film that was I guess it was my choice, but we narrowed it down the next one to be one from my collection, and that was a movie he had never seen before, which was The Count of Monte Cristo, which is I have never done like my all-time favorite movie list, and maybe I'll do that sometime. But I'm assuming that if I did that this movie would probably be in my top 5 or top 10 all time. I just love that film for a lot of different reasons, and nobody I've ever showed it to. First of all, nobody's ever heard of it that I ever mention it to. They don't know what I'm talking about, and then we watch it and they agree that it's a great film, which he did as well. So I was happy about that, and I've probably watched that film, I don't know, 5 or 6 times now at least. So that was the second one we watched from there. Then randomly watched Tangled, the Disney film, over the course of the last week. My roommate's fiance, who's also my roommate, so I guess that's kind of weird to say it like that. But she had it on, and I'm like, I've never seen that before. So she was only a couple minutes into it, so she started it back from the beginning and watched that. And I got to say, you know, I think maybe in a couple decades or so, we may look back at the trio of, you know, and I know a lot of people don't like Princess and the Frog. I haven't seen that, but I'm going to put it in the same category just for the heck of it, because it kind of came out in the same time period. Princess and the Frog, Tangled, and Frozen is kind of, I know, you know, like we were talking about in different podcasts, like a mini Disney Renaissance. We'll see where they go from here. I haven't heard any plans of a princess movie coming down the pipeline, but I know they got some other films going out. But definitely enjoyed Tangled. And then had a Redbox day. I had a free Redbox thing, and I knew a bunch of films had come out Tuesday, so I checked, and they were all going to be available at the closest Redbox to me. So I got 3 films. I got Ain't Them Bodies Saints, The Spectacular Now, and Fruitvale Station, and watched all 3 of those to kind of catch up on some 2013 films that I hadn't seen now. I got to say I enjoyed them all. Ain't Them Bodies Saints was interesting for sure. I don't know if I'm the biggest Casey Affleck fan in the world, but Rooney Mara, that's her name, right?
Yeah.
Was fantastic in that. She had a great year, actually. She was fantastic in a couple different movies. And it was definitely an enjoyable film. Not going to be something I mention later on in today's episode, but I still very much enjoyed the film. Not quite as much as I enjoyed Fruitvale Station and The Spectacular Now, though. In a year that is chock full of great coming-of-age films, The Spectacular Now is right up towards the top. Really like that film overall. I don't know if I'd ever really seen any films. I'd have to look back and see what all they've been in, but Shailene Woodley, Miles Teller, and some of the other people involved, I really thought they did fantastic. Shailene Woodley especially was incredible. So I enjoyed that film. Fruitvale Station, again, enjoyed as well, obviously based on a true story. And you have reviews for both of those, don't you, on the site?
No, just Fruitvale Station.
Okay.
I only caught The Spectacular Now myself 2 weeks ago, I think. So it's pretty fresh in my mind as well. I didn't get a chance to watch that when it first came out.
But you guys can definitely check out the site and see more of Dan's thoughts on Fruitvale Station. So I thought all 3 of those were really good films for 2013. I'm glad I got a chance to watch them before we kind of made end of the year list, etc. And then I made one trip to the theater this week as well, and that was to see August Osage County, which I thought was phenomenal. The acting in that film was ridiculously good, as a bunch of award shows will attest to. I will say that it brought up an interesting thing, a couple things. Actually, tracing back to when I was watching Fruitvale Station, I was watching that, and my roommate was going to start watching the film with me. And it kind of leads me to what possibly could be our question for this week. Because he was not interested in watching it because he made the comment that basically he watches movies to escape from reality, and not to necessarily be faced with it. And obviously, Fruitvale Station was a pretty emotional film based on reality, which is interesting because I tend to be a little of both. I like them for both aspects, but I never kind of thought of it that way. That some people would be of the opinion that they don't watch films if they're too real, and they would rather just use them as an escape. And that's kind of how they view movies, and how some other people might gravitate more towards a real movie, which kind of leads into August Osage County, because that is definitely a movie that he probably wouldn't like then, because it's very real. It's no sugarcoating. This is seeing a family as you would only see your own. You never get to see this on other families because they always do a good job of hiding it or covering things up or making it seem better. And this is just like rips away all those things and lets you get an insight look at someone else's family and all the real aspects of the different crazy, odd, all the spectrum of emotions and what exists. I mean, some people might say it's almost too much to an extreme where it's not real, but I guarantee that there are families out there that have just as much drama, if not more, than you see in this film, and just some great performances that I'll talk about later probably. But definitely enjoyed that film. So those were the 7 films that I was able to see this week.
Yeah, so you had a busy week for sure, I guess.
Yeah.
I would say what one was your favorite, but don't want to spoil anything because I don't know if any of those will be appearing later, but
hopefully I was vague enough that any of those people will think that any of those could be, but they're not sure.
I'm not sure, so
okay.
but they can be more intuitive than I am. So, so we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we have a busy news week to go over. So we'll see you in a bit.
So let's say you're looking for a podcast of your favorite 80s comic books, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Ninja Turtles, He-Man, etc. Where are you going to go to find us?
Welcome to Star Joe's Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan.
And I'm Chuck. That's right, everybody. We're the Star Joes. We host a podcast called Star Joe's Podcast, where we talk about your favorite comic books, your favorite toys of all the 80s properties.
Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Mask, Thundercats, Voltron, you name it, we cover it. If it's in the 80s, we'll cover it at some point.
Yes, so what you want to do to find us, you can go to iTunes, you can go to www.starjoes.com.
And remember, the Force will be with you.
Because knowing us is half the battle.
All right, and welcome back. And we'll begin the news like we always do. We'll take a look at this past weekend's box office. And this past weekend, we had a few new films come out, and one of those surpassed Lone Survivor as number 1. Ride Along, starring the new sensation Kevin Hart, came in first with $41 million. Lone Survivor went down to number 2, dropping about 38%, which is pretty impressive because 38% is below the average amount that someone usually falls. So it's so impressive with $20 million. The Nut Job came in number 3, rounding out the top 5. Jack Ryan, the also new film coming out this past weekend, came in 4th place with $17 million. And number 5, Frozen, coming in with 11. Also coming out for the first time this week, it was Devil's Due, the new horror movie about the devil having a baby. That seems that they always get 1 or 2 coming out this time of year. And that came in 7th place with $8 million. And
it made its budget back.
So and made it, exactly. And that's why they come out, because they can make their budget back really quickly. But I guess I'll start. Are you surprised that, Ride Along came in so high at $41 million, and Jack Ryan, you would think maybe a little bit more high profile, dropped down to number 4 with $17 million?
If you would have asked me last week, and maybe we should start doing this in a way, I guess, and we talked about some of the things along this line, but if you were to ask me last week to predict as far as the new movies coming out, Ride Along, The Nut Job, Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit, and Devil's Due, if you would have asked me to predict the order they would have came in, I probably would have said that Jack Ryan would have came out on top amongst those, then The Nut Job, then Ride Along, and then Devil's Due. So I'm definitely surprised that amongst those, Ride Along. I didn't realize he had that much pull. He's a funny guy, and I enjoy him, and I knew that he was popular. I didn't know he was that popular.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's a new sensation. Like, $41 million is nothing to shake at. And I guess it's funny. I was reading an article about Jack Ryan and how so many people just don't know who Jack Ryan is. Like, it's not a name that is. I mean, maybe even some of the listeners may not even realize there are Jack Ryan movies. So I think they just did a bad job at marketing that. And it's a little bit difficult when every time it's played by a different actor. So I think it doesn't have...
Well, I don't think the marketing did enough to tie him into the other Jack Ryan properties.
No.
Or the other Jack Ryan movies, et cetera. and I think a lot of people would just be like, okay, who's this random Jack Ryan shadow recruit? It's almost like what was the Tom Cruise movie?
Jack Reacher.
Jack Reacher, or like where someone just like all of a sudden throw this name out, and you're like, if you're not familiar with certain things, you're gonna like be like, okay, who's this character? It just seems like that without tying it into some of the other stuff which some of us grew up with, etc. So, yeah, maybe a flaw in marketing with that one. And out of the ones that opened, that is the one that is going to have the hardest time. I'm not saying it won't make its budget back, but it's the one that had the most disappointing opening.
Yeah, for sure. That was set to come out actually on Christmas Day. They pushed it back, and I think they pushed it back thinking it would be less competition, but that wasn't the case. When Ride Along has already made double its budget, it will almost double its budget. It was a budget of $25 million, so it will easily double. And when we talk about the movies coming out next week, we can maybe discuss. We think it'll stay number one.
And it was also an interesting. I guess we'll have to mark this down for next year. That this is the week when a couple of award shows have already aired, and then when the Oscar nominations hit, that you see the resurgence where all of a sudden all the Oscar nominated films get put back in theaters. So looking down the list, you can definitely see that domino effect going through, because you have something like American Hustle winning a bunch of awards that actually shrunk in theater count, so it goes against what I just said, but it increased its gross from last week. Almost 28% increase there, and you can see, a couple different films where Gravity got put back into about 800 theaters. 12 Years a Slave got put back into 650 theaters. Dallas Buyers Club, almost 300 theaters. Captain Phillips, almost 800 theaters. So it definitely pays to get those nominations and get that acclaim. It's not something that's lost on the movie-going audience. And then you also saw increases, even though you had theater count decreases, you saw an increase from All Is Lost, an increase from Nebraska, and like I said, the increase in American Hustle. So there's nothing else you can tie those to except for the award season.
Yeah, that is quite interesting, and I'm sure that you may see a little bit more of that they'll as we get closer and closer to the Oscars, some of those will stay there. I mean, I know some of them are coming out on Blu-ray soon, but still, I mean, Gravity's still far off, and I think it's such a claim, just the fact that it's a theater experience, that I think that's, you may see it coming. I don't think it'll ever get into the top 10 again, but they may come closer. So.
Oh, and Blue Jasmine also got put back in 12 theaters. Interesting to see some big drops too with I guess the combination of all these Oscar films, a combination of 4 newly released films. Some films really took a dive, and I'm not necessarily looking at percentage change, but from last week to this week, and as far as where they came in, The Legend of Hercules went from 3rd last week to 13th, and the people that funded that film have to be kicking themselves. The Hobbit went from 6th to 12th. Paranormal Activity went from 9th to 18th. So definitely some big drops. Those were all over 50% drops. Anchorman also had a 61% drop, and The Secret Life of Walter Mitty is almost a 70% drop, and that film is basically on life support.
Yeah.
Not even, just barely passing the halfway point towards that budget.
And I guess we can consider The Legend of Hercules the first bomb of 2014.
For sure.
Making, at this point, $14 million with a budget of $70 million. So, which I still don't understand where that money's going. But maybe
it's
catering.
Funny though, even though I mentioned all those films just now that had those big drops of 50-60%, none of them take the cake for this week, which is obviously, since Christmas is over, Tyler Perry's A Medea Christmas dropped almost 82%, and Grudge Match 92% drop. And then some of the other bigger releases, 47 Ronin and Walking with Dinosaurs, almost 75% drop each for them. So definitely an interesting time of year to see things doing much better and to see things doing much worse than expected. It's hard to predict, I guess.
Yeah, I guess those Oscar nominations helped for some movies, but Medea's Razzie nominations did not help it. So
no, not at all.
Anything else before we bring it on over to headlines?
No, not at all. Just an interesting week at the box office. We'll have to see next week if some of that Oscar buzz continues to help some of those films. All
right, so I will pass the mic over to you. You want to bring us down this past week's headlines?
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize it was going to be such a big weekend in films. I know a lot of people are trying to catch up and watch all the 2013 films that they haven't seen yet. We still have all the look ahead to 2014. We got the award season underway, and I guess I just didn't expect there to be as many news items as there was. But there was plenty of interesting stuff to talk about this week. And starting off, since we'll talk about the Oscar nominations later, why not have a little fun and talk about the Razzie nominations, which were also released this week. And headline there, Grown Ups 2 is the clear winner of this year's Razzie nominations. 8 nominations, including Worst Picture, Worst Sequel, Worst Screenplay, Worst Lead Actor, Worst Supporting Actor, Worst Supporting Actress, Worst Ensemble, and Worst Director. So that is interesting. Talking about Worst Picture, they had After Earth, Grown Ups 2, The Lone Ranger, A Medea Christmas, and Movie 43. Worst Actor, they had Johnny Depp from Lone Ranger, Ashton Kutcher and Jobs, interestingly, Adam Sandler, Grown Ups 2, Jaden Smith in After Earth, and Sylvester Stallone for Bullet to the Head, Escape Plan, and Grudge Match. I love the way they do this thing. Worst Actress, Halle Berry for Movie 43 and The Call, Selena Gomez for Getaway, Lindsay Lohan, The Canyons, Tyler Perry, A Medea Christmas. Sorry. Oh, and Naomi Watts for Diana in Movie 43. It's just interesting. Worst screen combo, the entire cast of Grown Ups 2, the entire cast of Movie 43, Lindsay Lohan and Charlie Sheen, Scary Movie 5, Tyler Perry and either Larry the Cable Guy or the worn out wig and dress. It's just, and I like this, that they have a category for the worst remake, ripoff, or sequel. Grown Ups 2, Hangover 3, Lone Ranger, Scary Movie 5, and The Smurfs 2. Do you get a kick out of the Razzies? Do you think they somehow nail it with some of the worst things of the year?
Somewhat. I think a lot of it is just a little bit piling on. A little. I mean, I don't know. I think like the Lindsay Lohan thing is just like, all right, I get it, what they're doing. Like the Ashton Kutcher Jobs one, I don't know. I think that's just because it's Ashton Kutcher, but I didn't think he was that bad in that movie.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's nothing there I disagree with. I mean, most of those were pretty bad nominations, and Stallone getting nominated for all those awards is rightfully due. He was not good this year. But yeah,
he tried to be good, but he tried to make a comeback.
I always appreciate the actors and actresses that play along and actually show up for the Razzies. Like Sandra Bullock, when she won her Razzie, she won a Razzie the one day and she won the Oscar the next, but she actually showed up to accept her award. So I like it when they can actors show that they don't take themselves too seriously and are willing to realize, yeah, I crapped a bit on that one, so it's bound to happen.
All right, so with that fun out of the way, we'll get into some other news headlines from the week. How about the big rumor about Star Wars Episode 7 to cast original stars in leading roles? This is a multi-faceted rumor here. I guess we got a couple different things coming out of this article. Now, the report is all about Lawrence Kasdan, who we had talked about, who came in as a replacement for Michael Arndt. We talked about that a few months ago. And according to this article here, then saying, now we can't know how much we can really put into this, but it's saying that the new script has Han, Luke, and Leia in the leading roles once more, with Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, and Carrie Fisher all set to reappear. And apparently Michael Arndt had the offspring of these people as main characters, and now the change is that Lawrence Kasdan is having the offspring take supporting roles, with the spotlight being on the ones that I mentioned just before. It's also saying that Michael Fassbender and Hugo Weaving and Jesse, how do you say his name? Pymons?
I think so. That's as close as I would get.
Have all met with J.J. Abrams at some point. Now, again, this could all be just rumor mill for the internet, but that is the news story that broke this week regarding Star Wars. What do you put into that?
I don't know. That's tough to try to get the band back together after 40 years or so. That try to recapture that. I don't know. Like I get what they're trying to go with, but I just wonder if it's gonna be forcing it on. Like I think it'd be fine if those characters of the main cast, like Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, come back in supporting roles, but putting them as the main roles, I don't know. I just don't see it. I think it's such a hard thing to try to replicate chemistry of people when they haven't really been in anything together for such a long time. So
I can see the idea being that this is the first one linking the original films to this new chapter, so you want to like have that link and that connection. But like you said, being so long, I would question how you execute it. I guess I don't have a problem with the idea, but I don't know how they execute that accurately. And I wanted to go into one other news story that actually just came out today. In relation to Star Wars, that I wanted to I think it just broke today, but I didn't have it included in the original script here, and that was about the one we talked about last week, how they would have one of the spin-offs discussing or being focused on Boba Fett. And the interesting story that I read was that the way they were going to do it is apparently Lawrence Kasdan is again linked to this rumor as well. It's saying that he didn't like how Boba Fett was portrayed in the prequels. He liked the mystery of the character in the original trilogy. He didn't like how he was connected, with the Attack of the Clones and the Clone War, etc. So apparently, the rumor that came out was that in the writing of this spin-off to feature Boba Fett, that there will be somebody that basically kills Boba Fett as we saw him in the prequels, and basically takes his his mask and all his gear and whatnot, and assumes his identity, and that he would be the one that we saw in the original trilogy. And so it basically is a way to try to get the character that was introduced in the prequels and eliminate that backstory and create a new one for Boba Fett that has more mystery involved, I guess. Thoughts on that at all?
Sure. I kind of agree with it. I think it's a subtle way of saying, yeah, George Lucas, you kind of messed up here. So we're just going to literally kill your idea and then go for our own. Yeah, I wouldn't be all that against it. I think it, like you said, it would allow more mystery, and it wouldn't pigeonhole that movie, because if you think about it, they would have to use an actor that looks like the guy from Attack of the Clones and whatnot, and that can be difficult. That limits who they can get for the role. So I think that opens up their options a little bit more. So I would be completely for it.
All right. Moving on to some other stuff we mentioned a couple weeks ago, Quentin Tarantino apparently was planning a Western as his next film. More to go with that story. Apparently a title linked to that would be The Hateful Eight. And it's saying that he has Bruce Dern and Christoph Waltz in mind for leading roles. Is that stuff that you like hearing about this upcoming Tarantino project?
Yeah, I mean, so far the Waltz Tarantino matchup has been really great, and I'll talk about it shortly. But I'm a big fan of Bruce Dern's work in Nebraska, so
right.
Him in like a Western, that'd be pretty awesome. And I don't know, I guess. Will it tie into Waltz's character from Django? Probably not. I don't know, but I'd be for it because I love that character. So if we get to see more.
The other thought was if this will be done fast enough to join the ranks of the 2015 films. So
well,
we'll see about that.
Well, now there's a big opening, so
yes.
Maybe.
Getting into, I hadn't heard anything about this, but maybe I was in the dark. Apparently, Fox is planning an adaptation of Magic: The Gathering. Simon Kinberg to produce and develop the fantasy card game. I guess it's somewhat due to the fact that it's soon to celebrate its 20th year of publication. So I guess we're going to possibly get we're having Warcraft soon. Apparently, we're going to get a Magic: The Gathering movie. Thoughts on that?
I've never played Magic. I don't know if you.
Neither have I.
I don't really know much about it.
I think we both just got minus points on the geek spectrum.
Perhaps. But there's such a absent fantasy genre right now. Like you have The Hobbit and pretty much nothing else. So if we can get some more fantasy with the Magic game and the Warcraft movie, and I think what's interesting about them, I don't have a great amount of I don't know a great amount about those worlds, but it seems like it's pretty open, so they can just create the world and have like using as like a setting for a really cool story with crazy creatures. So
yeah,
But that would be my assumption. I don't know if there's some sort of like story arc that goes with either of them. But
So you think after all is said and done, you think these will be like legit fantasy type films that, or that get well received, or do you think we're entering an era kind of similar to what we had in the 80s with just like these fantasy films that were not well received, but they became kind of cult classic type things? I mean, are we entering like a new fantasy phase?
I think Warcraft has a chance of being well received because it's going to be directed by Duncan Jones, who did Moon and Source Code. But yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a huge love out there for fantasy right now, so I could see it maybe being more of a financial, not success, but more of a critical, like you said, like a cult following than something like a mass appeal. Because Warcraft, I think, is going to scare off some people just because they're just like, oh, that's that game people get addicted to, and think about that character from South Park that is pretty synonymous with that game. But I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see a new influx of fantasy. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind that or westerns, because those are two genres that I don't think we get enough of these days.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we could get a lot more of both of those for my takes. I mean, we're finally getting a slew of sci-fi, but it seems like a couple of those other genres are still kind of lacking behind. Some comic book news about Sinister Six and Venom. This is coming from Roberto Orci, that talking about the difficulties of bringing the projects to big screen because of the villains being the protagonists. And saying that's kind of the debates and discussions that they're having is, how do you do that? It's something that I've been in favor of somebody in the comic book superhero world doing for a long time. So I really hope this doesn't, put a stop to there. I hope they can figure it out, because I think it's a great idea to have things from the villain side standpoint. It says Drew Goddard is going to be writing Sinister Six, so it's kind of his problem. He was kidding. But he says we're all working on each other's stuff, so we want to be true to it. There are some anti-heroes in this day and age. There's been examples of that even on TV, on The Shield. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do with Sinister Six, Venom, etc. What are your thoughts on villains being the protagonist?
I guess it's possible. It depends on how they do it. They have a comic in Marvel called like the Thunderbolts, where they're given some sort of injection or shot, so they have to, in order to like get free or become like free, they have to follow along. I think there's a similar story in DC as well. I think it'd be kind of cool just seeing things from the villain's perspective, or allowing that side of the story, because we've getting so much superhero origins. Why not, flip the script a little bit and see it from the other side?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I've been a fan of it. I think that's what the way DC could have gone, because they have some epic villains. So I'm a big fan. I just hope that they can do it the right way, I guess. And let's stay with comic books, moving away from the headlines and moving into, it's still a headline, but a headline of a delay nature, probably the biggest delay that we've talked about since the show started. And that would be, as everybody knows, the Batman versus Superman delayed until 2016. So everybody that was worried about the world ending in 2015, you can calm, take a deep, relaxing breath. It's just thinned out a little bit. What are your thoughts to this story?
Not hugely. The biggest thought I had was the quote that came out of it was they're delaying it to better realize their vision, which makes me wonder, like, what were they doing up to that point?
They were just casting people.
Exactly. I think that's what they were, casting people. They were making the costumes. They were picking the locations, and then they realized, oh wait, no one's working on the plot of the movie. We got to go back and do that.
Never stopped them before.
Exactly. But all in all, I think in the long run, it's probably a good thing, honestly. If they're going to say, hey, we're rushing this, we need to regroup and figure out what we're doing here, it's probably going to make for a better product. I'd rather them do that instead of like rushing out to hit a release date. But I think it kind of goes to show you this whole thing when we freak out about, like, oh, this year's going to be full of movies when it's like 3 years out. It's like, you never really know. Like, what, Star Wars is currently in 2015, and we've already talked about how we think that might get moved eventually. So, but I don't know.
I'm always a fan of stuff getting delayed, because usually it means that someone's going to take more time and actually write good stuff. Not always. Sometimes it's, there's complex issues that can be involved, and sometimes delays mean eventually that the film isn't made or stuff like that. That's not going to be the problem here. So I'm glad that they're realizing that they need more time, and hopefully it pays off. It's a domino effect here, though. Number one, now there's basically a void for Warner Brothers in 2015, which is said right now that the Peter Pan movie that we've mentioned a couple times will take that spot. I don't think that's a comparative substitution.
No.
But just a thing here, when any of these major movies shift, you can sometimes see a domino effect. And for example, if Star Wars Episode 7 shifted right now to summer 2016 or summer 2015 or whatever, you would see a slew of things being moved around. So there's always a domino effect. And what also it does is it sets up a possible head-to-head battle in the summer of 2016, because that is supposed to be also when one of the Marvel Phase 3 films comes out. So they might be going head-to-head in the summer of 2016 now. So, it's way too far in advance to speculate too much, but it'll be interesting to see how that move affects other things down the road.
For sure.
All right. That's the only delay story we have, but we do have a couple different things here for sequels and remakes. One not a surprise, and one maybe, I guess maybe it shouldn't be, because it seems like the trend here is to remake horror films. I don't know if there's been a ton of horror films that haven't been remade, but apparently Poltergeist is the next one. Remake to hit theaters February of 2015, so that will fill the void of Batman vs. No, I'm just kidding. So that's the next thing coming up. And in the same story, since this is all about 20th Century Fox, also announced that Planet of the Apes 3 will hit theaters in July of 2016. Obviously, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is coming this year, so now the third one will be July of 2016. So maybe 2016 we can start freaking out about now. Thoughts of a Poltergeist remake?
Sure, I guess. I mean, I guess like we said with horror films, they're remade so often. I guess Poltergeist has never been remade, but I don't know. I don't really have a sacred spot for horror, really, except for maybe a few of them. So, but yeah, I mean that I do really like that movie though. It holds up pretty well. Some of the practical effects do. Some of them really don't. But I would.
What this one does though, it harkens to what I'm just talking about, the chess match that is different studios and what they play, as far as, depending on what other stuff gets moved around, because we talked about a couple weeks ago that 50 Shades of Grey had been bumped from I believe it was supposed to be 2014, right?
Yeah, it was supposed to come out the same weekend as Guardians of the Galaxy.
So now it got shifted. We talked about a few weeks ago that it got shifted to February of 2015. Well, that is why now Poltergeist is going to be set to release that same week, because they originally, 20th Century Fox was going to do Nicholas Sparks' movie The Longest Ride. Now they don't want that to compete with 50 Shades of Grey, so they have swapped it out and put Poltergeist there, which obviously is not a similar film as 50 Shades of Grey. So again, it's just it's a constant strategic chess game going on between these studios.
Yeah, it's just trying to find holes where you can, and then sometimes you end up having a big gaping hole that there's nothing there. But we saw it already, like not too long ago. We talked about Jack Ryan, and that was supposed to come out in the summer, but Wolf of Wall Street got pushed back, so that got pushed back, and Monuments, it's just domino effect, like you mentioned. That is, I feel like sometimes it even changes movies that have already come out. But
yeah, and I guess it's a time of year where a lot of studios announce a bunch of stuff, because we also have some news coming out from Universal. Apparently, the studio is going to be working on a new animated version of Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which is right now rumored to be released in November of 2017. So good Lord, we're getting far out there. So remake an animated version of The Grinch Stole Christmas. Also, this should be no surprise that Universal has announced that Despicable Me 3 will also hit theaters in the summer of 2017. This franchise, after the showing that Despicable Me 2 had, I mean, you can pretty much assume that this franchise is not going to die for a while. The first two films have grossed more than $1.4 billion worldwide. So they have a spin-off film, The Minions, which is going to be coming out next year in 2015, and then 2 years after that we'll have Despicable Me 3. Thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know why we need a How the Grinch Stole Christmas cartoon remake. That's it's probably going to be 3D animation too. I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure that Despicable Me 3 has already made $100 million in the box office, even though it's not even been released yet. But yeah, I just hope it doesn't become like the Ice Age or the Shrek, where it's just, I don't know. I haven't seen the second one still up to this point, but it's just.
It can't go the same direction. I think this, like I said, even though the second one outdid the first one, I hope it's not going to go. I feel like the second one was a step down, and if they keep going that route, that's going to be unfortunate. So we'll see about that. So that's it as far as the remake, sequels, and rumors about films coming out. We do have quite a few things, though, as far as casting, more than normal. Starting off with the one that's not included there because it just broke in the last couple of days here. We talked originally about the biopic about John Belushi, and that Emile Hirsch would be playing the legendary comedian. Story coming out this week, which is weird because I just watched Spectacular Now, that Miles Teller is now being linked to play Dan Aykroyd, who would also be featured in the film as a character. So we'd have Emile Hirsch as John Belushi and Miles Teller as Dan Aykroyd. What do you think about that?
Interesting. They just seem very different in age. I guess not that far off, but I don't know. Like Miles Teller was really good in the Spectacular Now, so I can kind of see him as a Dan Aykroyd. Emile Hirsch, he's just not. I never saw Emile Hirsch do anything comedic, so that's my one question. He did Prince of Avalanche, which was kind of comedy, but I don't know. I guess it's wait and see. I'm not sold on that casting completely, but it could surprise me.
So we'll have to wait and see about that. Some other casting things here. Josh Holloway to join Batman vs. Superman and Dwayne Johnson set for Justice League, ? Again, we can't get away from these types of rumors. Josh Holloway being strongly considered for a part in the film, with the name Aquaman being thrown around by site comic book movie. And then another rumor linking Dwayne Johnson to a cameo in Batman vs. Superman, leading to a starring role in Justice League, and that Batman vs. Superman will end on a huge cliffhanger that could lead directly into Justice League, which apparently the two films are set to shoot back to back ahead of that 2016 release. I don't know what to put into any rumors about this film anymore.
Yeah, maybe they don't either, and that's why they pushed it back to 27. I don't know. I mean, it's at this point, like you said, who knows? Dwayne Johnson. I know a lot of people said, like, maybe he'll play Darkseid, or not Darkseid, but Doomsday. Maybe he'll play Lex Luthor. Maybe he'll be Green Lantern. I don't know. It's hard to say at this point. It's just like, I don't know. Just tell me. Just give me something that's credible. I think, I don't know, maybe because Ben Affleck's casting as Batman was such a huge reaction to it that they're apprehensive to release anything else. But I don't know. The idea of them leaving on a cliffhanger for Justice League, fine. I could see that. I mean, Marvel kind of did that with Captain America when that ended, and that led into the Avengers. So that I wouldn't be against. They tend to do that. But my question is, how well do they build up to it, and does that build up get in the way of that actual movie of Batman and Superman? So, I mean, that's the thing we're all kind of curious about.
Right. And the superhero casting rumors don't stop there. All about Ant-Man, this next one. Obviously, a lot of people have been talking about it this week. Michael Douglas has commented on his casting in Ant-Man as Hank Pym and has revealed that he has been dying to do a Marvel picture for so long. Says the script is fun, the director's good, his son will love it. It's a picture that he can see, which I'm guessing there's not many Michael Douglas's films that his kid could see.
Well, his kid's 50 years old. Maybe.
Meanwhile, Douglas says that he could soon be joined by Michael Pena, who is apparently thought to be currently mulling over an offer for an undisclosed role, and that Kevin Feige's attentions will soon turn to casting the female lead, with Rashida Jones and Bryce Dallas Howard said to be among the frontrunners. And obviously we already know that Paul Rudd is linked as Ant-Man to this film. So what are your thoughts as all this seemingly starts to come together on this Ant-Man film?
What I like about it, the casting of Michael Douglas, not necessarily the casting, just the idea of Hank. They're actually going to have Hank Pym in it. He's going to be the original Ant-Man, but it's going to be from the '60s, so they can kind of kill two birds with one stone. So they keep true to the comics to an extent, but also allow for the new character. Because I think Scott Lang is a more interesting character than for this version of Marvel than Hank Pym, because Hank Pym's far more serious. He's got a darker side. And I heard some people thinking that Michael Douglas as Hank Pym is going to be the villain per se, which I could see. I don't really see Michael Douglas as a scientist per se. I mean, he's a good actor for sure. I mean, he's a legendary actor, but it did come out of left field. But I trust Edgar Wright, and I think he probably saw something in Michael Douglas that's going to fit his vision for that character. So it is really shocking, though. Probably one thing I never expected was that Michael Douglas would be playing, a washed-up superhero.
So interesting news there. We've all known that there's Avatar sequels headed out down the pipeline, and we've assumed that Sam Worthington and Zoe Saldana will be a part of that. But as you said, you always just want the studios to just come out and tell us. Well, they have in this one. Fox has gone ahead and officially confirmed that not only will they appear in the next Avatar sequel, but they have both signed deals there for the next 3 films in the series. The interesting part about this, obviously, that the films will be shot back to back, and that they will be released in a 2016, 2017, 2018. But being that they're all 3 going to be filmed back to back, interesting. Not so much. It doesn't surprise me from a Sam Worthington standpoint. I'm not saying anything bad about him, but that could cost Zoe Saldana some opportunities to do some other films, and she has definitely been in the forefront of casting, the casting world, seems like, lately. So see how much her being tied up in this will affect her being in other films, or how much she can really do at the same time. But the thought of them both being committed to 3 films.
I guess you can kind of compare it to like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. I mean, it is tough, but you never know, though. Someone might be committed to it 3 films. They might only be short with that 3 films. They may only have a small portion of it or whatnot. And I think it makes a lot of sense when it comes to like this Avatar for doing it that way, because it's so special effects driven. But I don't know. I just don't know if I need 3 more Avatar movies. I don't
know if I need another one.
Or another one. Yeah, I think the other one was. I like the first one. I know a lot of people hate it for different reasons. I don't think it's amazing technically. I think it is an achievement for sure. But I don't know. I don't need 3 more.
Especially if there's no tension that either of these characters is going to be killed off.
Exactly.
So Avatar fans, I guess they will be happy.
Are there Avatar fans?
I don't know. I've never met them, but they might be out there somewhere. And let's just keep going back to superheroes. Thomas Kretschmann, cast as a villain in Avengers Age of Ultron, could play Baron Wolfgang von Strucker. I'm probably saying all of that wrong. But Joss Whedon has reportedly added another villain to his Avengers Age of Ultron cast. So that'd be interesting, saying that the character obviously is a Nazi officer who becomes a head of Hydra, and that he would be the boss of the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. All being unconfirmed, of course. But your thoughts of him being involved in this film, or another villain being involved in this film?
My guess is that he probably won't be like a main threat. Maybe something like in the beginning. If you remember, like beginning of the Avengers, where you had like Scarlett Johansson or Black Widow, like captured by some Russian terrorist or something like that. So I don't think he'll be like a looming threat. I think it's more so he'll be in a few scenes, but I could be wrong. But
and for those people that don't have a clue who I'm talking about, he would be known as Van Helsing on NBC's Dracula.
Well, there you go.
So interesting there, and I guess saving what I find the most interesting casting rumor that I saw. I guess it was a Marvel casting news extravaganza, according to this article. All these came out kind of relatively next to each other, and it's claiming that Marvel has met with Johnny Depp over the title role in their forthcoming Doctor Strange adaptation. So Johnny Depp for Doctor Strange. First, I guess your reaction to a Doctor Strange adaptation coming into existence. And then to me, I don't know. I don't know a ton about the character, but from what I've seen, Johnny Depp seems like a very suitable choice. But what's your reaction on that one?
I think Doctor Strange could make for a really interesting, cool movie. My question though is like, so far with like Thor, who's a magical character, they kind of base it in science. So how are they going to do that with Doctor Strange, who is, you know, he is all magic basically. So that I'm interested in. Johnny Depp in that role, I don't know. If he can play it straight, my worry is going to be kind of goofy, and he's going to play it as Johnny Depp as he has been recently. I heard some other rumors, some people saying John Hamm and a few other people.
Well, and last year it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I'd honestly rather Johnny Depp than Joseph Gordon-Levitt, just because I just don't see him. I think John Hamm could work.
I think what I like about Johnny Depp in the role is from just an appearance standpoint and being able to pull off the look of what I would envision my head Doctor Strange to look like works. But again, if he acts like
Tonto?
You know, if he acts like the same character that he's played in some of his last, you know, all the Pirates movies and The Lone Ranger, etc., then that doesn't work. But I would assume someone like Johnny Depp can break out of that mold and get into something else. He seems like a...
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, he can, and maybe that'll be something that'll be the lift in his career that he needs, because after The Lone Ranger, he needs something.
Yeah, so those are all the different rumors, a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of stuff to react to. Remember, you can react on the website to any and all of those things, whether it be Boba Fett and the idea behind that, or all the different superhero stuff coming out about that. As far as trailer talk, not as huge of a week. I mean, there is a lot of trailers, but we're not going to see anything that's like massively, you know, earth-shattering. A bunch of romantic comedies, some psychological stuff, some suspenses, some horror films, animated film Mr. Peabody and Sherman, a new trailer for Dom Hemingway, the first look at All Hail the King, the short featuring Ben Kingsley from the Marvel Universe. Any trailers that you saw or anything that was released this week that caught your eye or that you were interested in?
Not a huge amount. Honestly, the trailers were kind of lackluster this week. I mean, it's to be expected this time of year. The one that did kind of catch my eye, surprisingly, not that I think it's going to be an amazing movie, but Walk of Shame with Elizabeth Banks. It looked decent enough. It has an actor from The Wire, so that always has my attention. But that looked like it could be kind of funny. And for some reason, one-day movies, like movies that take place around one day or one time period, always are something I favor. So, again, it's for like I think March comedy, I could see it being at least something you can see it on a date and not be bored. So
I thought kind of in the same vein that Adult World somehow a little bit caught my eye in a, like I said, similar way that, you know, I'm not looking for anything ridiculously great about it or whatever, but I just thought that, you know, maybe that might be a quieter one that ends up being somewhat entertaining. Did you get a chance to see the All Hail the King spot?
I did, and I did like it. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing that, because I know a lot of people don't really like that whole twist, but I found it really funny, and I find that character really amusing that Kinsley's playing, so I think it'd be kind of cool.
Is there any chance that they're going to do a complete 180 with that character and make it so that he was playing that role in order to avoid stuff, and that he is eventually going to be the bad guy that people wanted him to be?
I doubt it, just because I don't think they're going to make another Iron Man movie, and if they were going to do that, they would have to make another Iron Man movie, and it seems they kind of have moved on and are focused on more of the galactic side, so I don't think so.
And did you see the other trailer for Dom Hemingway at all?
I did, and actually that does look really funny. I saw the Red Band trailer, and yeah, it earned its Red Band status, but Jude Law just looks ridiculously unhinged, and that looks like a lot of fun.
And then, of course, there's also the Cesar Chavez film trailer that was out. That could go one of two ways, but it has a decent cast link to it, so I don't know. I'm on the fence with that one. But anything else trailer talk that you wanted to talk about?
No, that's all for me. How about yourself?
And that's it. So it's time for the double feature. I'll swing it back to you.
All right, yes. We'll be back in just a short bit, and we come back, we'll be talking about the Oscars, as well as our top 10 movies of the year. We'll see you soon.
Ooh.
Welcome back. And this past week, the Oscars gave out their annual, nominations. And with every time there's Oscar nominations, there's snubs, surprises, all that great stuff. To start things off, we're just going to kind of walk down some of the bigger awards and just go over the nominations and who got who got the nomination and what we think of it and whatnot. So, Kevin, you just want to walk us down some of the bigger awards?
Yeah, we'll start with what is usually considered the biggest award, and I think interesting to say, I guess if we combined our viewing from the year, there's only one film nominated for Best Picture that was not seen by one of the two of us. So interesting that there was 9 nominees for Best Picture. Did you read anything that suggested why they went with 9 instead of 10?
Well, the way it works is in order to get nominated for Best Picture, you need to at least have 5% of the people vote for you for Best Movie of the Year. And so that caused, whatever the 9th film was, it had 5%, but nothing below it. So
okay. So we had 9 nominees for Best Picture. The Wolf of Wall Street, 12 Years a Slave, Philomena, which would be the one that neither one of us has seen, Nebraska, Her, Gravity, Dallas Buyers Club, Captain Phillips, and American Hustle. Any surprise? Do you want me to walk down all of them, or should we react to that one first, Sarah?
Let's react to that one first,
Okay.
I guess, since it's the big picture, literally.
Surprises that anything was included in there that you think maybe shouldn't have, or anything that you think was left out?
I would say I was a little bit surprised. Philomena got nominated. Dallas Buyers Club, I'm not totally surprised. I don't think I would have picked it there. I was hoping Inside Llewyn Davis would get a nomination. I thought maybe The Butler had an outside chance because of its subject matter. It got critical praise. It made a decent amount of money. Maybe it just came out too earlier in the year, and so that was a surprise to me. And Saving Mr. Banks too, I thought had a shot. How about yourself?
Some of the same films. I thought there was a lot of traffic and a lot of people pushing for Inside Llewyn Davis. Saving Mr. Banks would be probably my biggest surprise there. I don't know maybe if August Osage County came out too late in the game or what the deal was with that. I know a lot of people reacted badly to The Butler. I probably would have thrown it in there, but I guess it becomes a numbers game at that point. But I'm not necessarily surprised with the ones that are there. I mean, there was buzz about all of those, with maybe the exception being Philomena, but maybe we're both just missing out on something there. But none of the other films are surprising that they're included.
I'm more surprised that there was only 9 films, not 10. I thought this year we'd have at least
sure.
10 again. So
yeah, I'm very surprised at that. As far as Best Director, you got David O. Russell from American Hustle, Alfonso Cuarón from Gravity, Alexander Payne from Nebraska, Steve McQueen for 12 Years a Slave, and Martin Scorsese for The Wolf of Wall Street. I don't think there's much surprise there.
No, I think it kind of tells you if there were only 5 pictures nominated, what 5 would be there. So yeah, nothing surprising there.
Yeah. As far as Best Actor, now we'll get into some surprises, maybe and some snubs. Christian Bale for American Hustle, Bruce Dern for Nebraska, Leonardo DiCaprio for The Wolf of Wall Street, El Jafar for 12 Years a Slave, and Matthew McConaughey for Dallas Buyers Club. I'm not saying any of those people don't deserve it, but is this maybe the time where we expanded Best Picture once upon a few years back? Is it time to expand some of the acting categories?
Possibly. I'm okay with it being 5. I think this year, yeah, but I don't. There's so many best male performances that could be here.
I guess what you could say is you don't necessarily have to expand it, but you could do something similar. Whereas, if X percentage, if anybody gets X percentage, they're included. So if that means you have 6, or if that means you have 7, then I guess so be it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I think what is it? Some of the Critics' Choice do that. Some of the MWIRE does that as well. And I wouldn't.
It's hard because this year, just like we talked about Best Picture, you can't argue against any of the nominees, really. I mean, you can't say any of these people are undeserving, but it's just you feel like a few people are left out. I mean, is it Oscar Isaac?
Yes.
I'm saying that backwards. I always feel like I want to say Isaac Oscar. Oscar Isaac from Inside Llewyn Davis. I think the biggest surprise that a lot of people had was that Tom Hanks, with being both in Saving Mr. Banks and Captain Phillips, did not get included in there.
Yeah, that would surprise me. And if we're gonna say take one out, I'd probably say Christian Bale. Not that his performance was bad. I just thought Tom Hanks and Captain Phillips was a better performance.
Yeah.
It's one, it required more of him, but.
Any other people that you think maybe got left out besides the two I mentioned?
Geez. I could see Michael B. Jordan in Fruitvale Station. I'm not surprised he didn't get nominated. It's such a strong year. Yeah, that, and like possibly, like I said, Tom Hanks and Captain Phillips are the two big ones that come to mind. You already mentioned Oscar Isaac. He's deserving as well.
I know that one of the other ones I read about in a couple different articles, people were saying that they were somewhat surprised that Idris Elba for Mandela wasn't involved in that either.
True.
So definitely a lot of good performances this year. For Best Actress, we have Amy Adams in American Hustle, Cate Blanchett, who will apparently win for Blue Jasmine, Sandra Bullock for Gravity, Judi Dench for Philomena, and Meryl Streep for August Osage County. Any surprises or people you think got left off of that category?
Nothing comes to mind particularly. I really thought Rumi Mara in you mentioned it earlier, but Ain't Them Body Saints was really great. Not surprised she didn't get nominated. Just that movie was a little bit not seen by that many people. But I also thought of one for Best Actor, which would be Robert Redford, for All Is Lost. But another one we could go with. But Best Actress, nothing really surprising. I guess, do you feel, you saw Osage County, do you feel Meryl Streep is deserving of the nomination?
Yeah, that's definitely. I think it's a really strong class. I mean, not seeing Philomena, so I can't speak to Judi Dench, but when you talk about Amy Adams' performance in American Hustle, which I think was ridiculously good, Sandra Bullock and everything she had to do, basically, being the one woman show in Gravity, I think Meryl Streep was just. I'm not a humongous Meryl Streep fan. I know she's had a ridiculous career, but this might have been one of her best performances ever. And according to everybody, Cate Blanchett is amazing in Blue Jasmine, so I will just take their word for that. My surprise here would be, if I had to pick one, would be Emma Thompson from Saving Mr. Banks.
Oh, true. I didn't think of her.
So that's really the only one I can kind of pinpoint that I would maybe question, see where she could be thrown in there somehow. But without seeing Philomena and Blue Jasmine, I can't really comment on those two. As far as Best Supporting Actor, Barkad Abdi, I have no idea if that's how you say his name, from Captain Phillips. Bradley Cooper from American Hustle continues the American Hustle love here. Michael Fassbender from 12 Years a Slave. Jonah Hill from The Wolf of Wall Street. And eventual winner, according to all the articles, Jared Leto for Dallas Buyers Club. I'll go first on this one. I think Fassbender's perfect for 12 Years a Slave and definitely worthy of the nomination. Barkad Abdi for Captain Phillips, I can see that. I think it's cool that they nominated Jonah Hill for The Wolf of Wall Street, because I did think he did a good job in that. I may be surprised that he got nominated, but I'm happily surprised, and I'm really glad that Jared Leto is getting all the love that he's getting for that role, because I think it was amazing. I don't know if I agree with Bradley Cooper being in here for American Hustle. I don't necessarily know who I would throw in instead, but I don't know. What are your opinions on a supporting actor?
Well, I agree. I think Cooper I probably would not include. Jonah Hill, that to me was a surprise, not against it, because it's such a comedic performance that I wasn't think he would get a nomination. Someone I think they could throw in there would be Daniel Bruhl, who was in Rush, who was amazing in Rush. I think he made that movie. Also, I think Benedict Cumberbatch in Fifth Estate. I guess you can argue it's a lead performance, but he's not really. He's more of the supporting character playing Julia Assange. But I think the thing that killed him in that was that movie wasn't very good, so it kind of got swept under the rug. But I think if that was a good movie, people would appreciate that performance a lot more.
Along with Robert Redford, we both missed a big one for Best Actor, and I'm not quite sure how you don't substitute him for Christian Bale, which would be Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, geez. Yeah, it's very true. I don't know how we missed that.
Yeah, I don't know how Joaquin Phoenix did not get any nomination there for Best Actor from her. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Best Supporting Actress, Sally Hawkins, Blue Jasmine, Jennifer Lawrence, American Hustle, Lupita Nyong'o for 12 Years a Slave, interesting Julia Roberts for August Osage County, and June Squibb for Nebraska. Thoughts on the Supporting Actress category?
Probably, of all the ones we've gone over, maybe, weakest is probably a mean word, but probably, I don't know.
I agree.
Like, I haven't seen Blue Jasmine, so I really can't say, or Osage County. I thought June Squibb was really good in Nebraska. Lupita Nyong'o in 12 Years a Slave, to me, is the winner. I did like Jennifer Lawrence's performance a lot more than you did in American Hustle, but I agree that I would not have nominated it for Best Supporting Actress. You have like Julia Louis-Dreyfus and like Enough Said, who was really great. A few other performances I think I would probably bring in
I thought
here.
even maybe Naomi Harris playing Winnie Mandela was
Possibly,
somewhat
yeah.
interesting one. I mean, she had to do a range of emotions too. I guess overall, I mean, if we're going to talk about and we'll get into a few of the other categories still, but I think overall, based on a couple of the award shows that have already happened and all the nominations here, I have nothing bad to say about American Hustle, but I guess I wasn't ready for it to get nominated in every category.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got a Best Director nominee, Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Supporting Actress.
For some reason, the Academy is just in love with David O. Russell movies. I mean, The Fighter got tons of nominations, Silver Linings Playbook, which I think are far better movies than American Hustle. So that to me was just the outpouring of love for American Hustle.
And I could see if maybe American Hustle was released in maybe a different year, but with this year's class, I just don't think it stood up to some of these other films. Getting into a few other categories briefly, Best Animated Feature, we'll just mention the nominees and the winner here. The Croods, Despicable Me 2, Ernest and Celestine, The Wind Rises, and Frozen. And unless Ernest and Celestine, I'm saying that name wrong, or The Wind Rises, unless one of those somehow sneaks in a win, that's going to go to Frozen.
Yeah, I could see possibly the Wind Rises winning it because it's Miyazaki. But besides that, yeah, it's going to be Frozen's award to lose.
I know you do a fair amount of documentary watching during the year. Are you happy with the nominees for that category?
I was a little upset that Stories We Tell didn't get nominated.
You saw The Act of Killing and Cutie and the Boxer, right?
Yes, and I saw Dirty Wars as well. The Square I have not seen. Or I also have not seen 20 Years from Stardom, but I've heard that's really good as well. And the one I think that The Act of Killing, I'm pretty sure it's definitely winning that for sure. But Dirty War is really good as well. Not surprising. It's more of a political documentary, and those tend to get nominated all the time. But Stories We Tell, I think, it's an interesting take on the documentary process, and it's basically just people telling stories. It's Sarah Polley's own life. It's done in a really personal way, and it deserved a nomination. It was my second favorite documentary of the year. But in Blackfish, I know a lot of people were surprised that didn't get nominated because a lot of people talked about that. It was released by CNN, huge controversy, probably the most talked about documentary of the year. But so I'm not as high on it as most people, but I know a lot of people are surprised by that.
As far as foreign language, had you seen any of the other nominees besides The Hunt?
I've only seen The Hunt, no.
Okay. Best Original Song, interesting. I just want to bring up for a couple of reasons. We have Alone Yet Not Alone from the movie of the same title. Happy from Despicable Me 2. The Moon Song from Her. Let It Go from Frozen, and Ordinary Love from Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. And my only thought here is if they did not nominate anything from Inside Llewyn Davis, then Let It Go from Frozen better win.
And I did that. To me is one of the biggest snubs. How you don't nominate Inside Llewyn Davis for at least best song? It's like give it something. But yeah, like you said, it's Let It Go. It has to win this award.
Just a couple other ones. I mean, obviously you can go to a number of websites to see some of the other categories. The only couple other ones that I wanted to talk about. Best Original Score, we had The Book Thief, Gravity, Her, Philomena, and Saving Mr. Banks. Again, Inside Llewyn Davis left off of one of the musical categories, which just seems weird to me. And there was one. Best Visual Effects I wanted to touch on just briefly. We had Gravity, The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, Iron Man 3, The Lone Ranger, and Star Trek Into Darkness. Any surprise there?
The Lone Ranger, a little bit surprised. I'm surprised The Lone Ranger has as many Oscar nominations as Inside Llewyn Davis. This seems. I was a little bit surprised Man of Steel didn't. I thought the special effects in Man of Steel were pretty good, but that's Gravity's award to lose. So.
Correct. All right. Any other thoughts just in general before I go over some interesting facts and figures and trivia about the awards? Just surprises besides me. I said surprised at the amount of love for American Hustle and the lack of love for both Saving Mr. Banks and Inside Llewyn Davis. Any other thoughts overall, just looking at the entire field?
No, like I said, I'm surprised Lone Ranger got a nomination, as well as Jackass for Best makeup and hairstyling. But nothing really stands out. I mean, I think anytime you do these awards, you're going to have, like we've mentioned, there's only 5, so you're going to have people who don't get in. But my biggest thing is, like, why not give it to 10 movies? Because if any year ever deserved 10 pictures being nominated, it'd be this year. So.
All right, so a couple interesting things that you might find interesting or might want to share with somebody here. But now that we know all the nominees, we have some statistics we can share. Meryl Streep extends her longstanding record as the most nominated actor in Oscar history. Her Best Actress nod for August Osage County is her 18th overall, 6 higher than the nearest challenger.
Jeez. Wow.
But she's never catching up with composer John Williams, who with this year is now up to 49 for his nominee for The Book Thief, and that's a record among living individuals. He, however, needs to go a little bit longer to catch Walt Disney's all-time record of 59. Woody Allen, meanwhile, his record for Best Original Screenplay nominations, he had his 16th for Blue Jasmine. So as many people that maybe don't like Woody Allen, he definitely has quite the resume there as far as nominations go. Like Silver Linings Playbook last year, American Hustle scored nods in all 4 acting categories. That there's only been 15 films in Oscar history to do that. So we kind of mentioned that a little bit. And of course, all 4 of those actors have previously been nominated for other David O. Russell films. From that quartet, Amy Adams scored her 5th nomination in 9 years.
Jeez.
So that is an impressive stretch. This is the first year since 1994 that the Best Actress category features no first-time nominees. And Amy Adams is the only non-winner in that group.
And she'll probably say not winner, unfortunately. But
The Wolf of Wall Street, the 5th of Martin Scorsese's last 6 films to score nods for Best Picture and Director.
Interesting.
So, and also his 12th career nomination. Let's see here. Roger Deakins, I'm obviously not familiar with him, but he landed his 11th nomination for Prisoners. He's a cinematographer. 11th nomination. He's the most nominated living cinematographer never to have won.
He does a lot of work with the Coen brothers. And last year he did Skyfall. So.
Gotcha. Spike Jonze has now been nominated in 4 different Oscar categories. He's had a nomination for Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, Original Song, and Best Director, which was back in 1999 for being John Malkovich. Let's see here, a couple other things. At just 27, Megan Ellison becomes only the 4th producer to land 2 Best Picture nominations in a single year for her in American Hustle. The others would be Francis Ford Coppola and Scott Rudin. After John Singleton and Lee Daniels, Steve McQueen becomes only the 3rd black filmmaker to receive a Best Director nod and the 1st of non-United States origin. Despicable Me 2 is nominated for Best Animated Feature, where its predecessor, Despicable Me, was not. That has never happened before.
Interesting.
So it's weird that I'm going to have to go back and look at the year Despicable Me came out, but maybe just people didn't, I don't know. That's weird that Despicable Me 2 would be nominated and the first one wouldn't. Meanwhile, Pixar's only 2 misses in the category, Cars 2 and Today, with this year's nominations, Monsters University, have been sequels to nominated films.
And I would say Monsters University probably deserves a nomination more than The Croods, but
yeah,
it's
let's see. Other than that, with the nominee for 20 Feet from Stardom still unconfirmed, 3 women are nominated for Best Documentary Feature here. So that's the first. And that's it for the news and trivia. I just thought a couple of those were somewhat interesting. And you can share your thoughts and reactions to all the different Oscar news on the website as well, or you can give us voicemails or send us emails with your overall reactions if you want to do that too.
Sure, definitely like to know what people thought. We saw a little bit of reaction, but I'm curious to see what people thought didn't get nominated that should, or got nominated that shouldn't, all that great stuff. So now that we've talked about the Oscars and what they picked, it's time to get into what we picked and what our top films of the year are.
And people have been asking about what if we were going to do this, and it was always in the plan, so now we're finally here. We just needed a little bit more time to watch a few more movies, but we are here to give you our picks finally.
All right, so we're going to get in here with our top 10, and I guess I'll be selfish and I'll start off with my top 10. And what's interesting about these lists is that they're always changing. Mine's already changed in the last few weeks or so, and my top 10 from last year is nothing like it is now. But at this moment, on this very day, I'll start with my number 10. And
before you get to your talk about, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you talk about stuff changing. It's interesting too because last year you did an interesting thing, and you did a blog post, I think in June, about halfway through the year, with your top 10 films of the year so far.
Yes,
it was just interesting. I went back and did some looking back in the last week as I was composing mine and thinking about how stuff changes, and just looking at your list from June and your top 10 so far to the year to what you posted as your top 10, about a couple weeks ago to now what it is now. It's just interesting to see how things change, because I don't think anything that was your top 10 in that June post was in your eventual top 10. But that's partly because so many more films come out in the second half of the year. But it's just interesting to see how things not only change during the year, but like you said, as you see more films and more films, how years prior would change.
Exactly. Yeah. So honestly, I at the halfway point, I thought maybe a few might switch in at the end of the year, but just so much came out this year that it didn't happen. All right, but my number 10, it was actually close to seeing it near the halfway point. I saw it a few weeks after I made that list, and that is from the Richard Linklater now trilogy, from the Before series, and of course it's Before Midnight. I came late to this franchise. I guess if you even want to call it a franchise. I think I saw it for the first time 2 years ago, so I didn't get to see it as it happened, as a lot of people have. And for those that aren't aware, Richard Linklater has a series called the Before series. It started with Before Sunrise in 1994, and then Before Sunset 7 years later, and now Before Midnight. And basically the premise is Ethan Hawke and Julie Depri were two kids who met each other one day, and they kind of struck up this relationship, and the entire movie takes place in one day, and they're supposed to meet each other, and then 7 years later, there's another movie that kind of goes deeper into it. And then 7 years later, we have this movie. It takes place in kind of real time. You see the change of these characters happen. So you kind of been able to grow old with these characters. And what it gets at, it gets a lot of things. It's a lot more cynical than the last two films. The first two were very uplifting, I guess you would say. More idealistic. This one was a little bit more harsher. The characters aren't as, let's say, in love with each other in certain ways. Love is starting to diminish a little bit, and there's conflict there. But I just love the relationships here. It's so well written. There's a personal side to it that's there, and it's so relatable if you've ever been in a relationship. And two, you can tell that Ethan Hawke and Julie Depri and Linklater put in a lot of their own personal life into it, because you can tell, even though it's not the dialogue they're having is in the movie, there's certain points that very much relate to their own lives. And so if you've not checked out the Before series, I would say check it out, but be warned, it's literally just two people walking and talking. It's not everyone's favorite thing in the world, but they magically make it work. So that's my number 10, Before Midnight. How about yourself, Kevin?
I still want to see that one, but I feel like I need to see them all in the right order, which is...
I would say yes, definitely, because if you watch Before Midnight without seeing the other two, it's not going to make any sense.
And that's one of the only reasons why I didn't watch it this year, even though I knew it was, widely praised. I thought that would be a disservice to do that. My number 10, I guess maybe some people would find, if there's going to be one that's going to be surprising on my list, maybe that people critique me for, maybe it's going to be this one. But I'm going to go with a comedy, and somewhat of a... not really coming of age, but kind of similar to that type of still. I'm going to go with Drinking Buddies as my number 10.
Nice. With
Olivia Wilde, Jake Johnson, Anna Kendrick, Ron Livingston. I didn't see this in the theater. I didn't see this until actually a few weeks back. I just really enjoyed this film. I almost enjoyed it more. It's kind of one of those that... even after you watch it and think about it a little bit longer, it kind of grows on you even more. It does have an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes. I just thought it was good. It was real. People talk about trying to escape reality. I guess maybe I'm not one of those people, because I like movies that that I feel like could really happen. It's not one of those that just has this like fairy tale storybook ending. It's just real. It's about people and their relationships, and a little bit about working relationships, a little bit about actual relationships. Olivia Wilde was fantastic in it. I like Anna Kendrick, even though she wasn't necessarily one of the main roles. I like her in just about anything she does, it seems like. But I just really enjoyed this. I thought it was clever. Like I said, I thought it was real, and for that, I appreciated it.
Yeah, that was a huge surprise to me for a while as well. It didn't make my top 10, but I felt that was the best. I don't even want to call it a comedy, but I called it the best romantic comedy of the year. So, but if you like that film, I think you might like the Before series because I think they share a lot of the same sensibilities.
Excellent.
All right, but going on to my number 9, we talked about Robert Redford a little earlier, and my number 9 is All's Lost, which is all Robert Redford all the time. For those that don't know, it's a movie about Redford. He's lost at sea, and literally it's just very little dialogue. I was just amazed at the direction of the film and how it can keep your attention and tell you so much without really saying anything. It also has one of my favorite endings of the year. It just, watching that movie, I was like, how are they going to end this? Because there's so many things they can do, and how they ended it, I think it was going to be the telling point. Like, am I going to love this film or not like where it goes? And I was amazed in how just at the right second they ended it. They just leave it open enough that you kind of have an idea what's there, you don't. And sometimes you can also argue the other end. So I don't want to give anything away. I'm just saying that it leaves the door open for conversation for sure. And Robert Redford gives the best performance he's given in quite some time. He without saying much of anything, he just has a certain presence to him. He doesn't get he reserves his frustration to the right moments. You can tell when he's really getting freaked out, it really means something. And to just how they use the boat and with it rotating with the waves and how the stunt work in that and everything like that. So, and the score is also really great. So those who were a little scared, like, how can you make a movie about some guy at a boat with no Wilson next to him? Or it works. It's just really well directed. It's well edited too, so it always keeps your attention without even really saying anything. So, but yeah, that's my number 9.
It's one of those that's added to the growing list of films that have either just one actor or one setting, or you know what I mean. Yeah. It seems like we've had a lot of those in the last 5 to 10 years, and I definitely want to see that one. I just didn't have a chance to yet. My number 9. Obviously got a lot of critical acclaim. It's received 6 Academy Award nominations, including one of the nominees for Best Picture. I actually thought that somehow this was going to get squeezed off of my list as more and more movies kept being released, but it hung tight in my top 10, and that would be Captain Phillips. I thought Tom Hanks was wonderful in this. Another movie inspired by real events, with the whole hostage crises in the Indian Ocean. I just thought this was, again, it was really well done, well directed, well filmed. Paul Greengrass did a fantastic job. Tom Hanks, Barkat Abdi, if I'm saying that name right, did a fantastic job. And that last 30 to 45 minutes is just perfection. We talk about good endings. This, All Is Lost, you said, had a good ending. This one also very, very well done towards the end of the film. So really can't say too much bad about this film. I was worried that maybe it didn't stick out with me enough to stay in the top 10 as some of these other big films that had a big effect on me did. But when it came time to make my top 10 and I'm looking over all these other things, I couldn't find anything that I felt was, anything that didn't make my list that should take its spot or anything like that. So it stayed in my top 10, and I'm definitely actually looking forward to maybe rewatching this once it's out on DVD or Blu-ray.
Yeah, and it's actually coming out this week, and all I'll say is that movie might coming up shortly. That's all I'll say. But,
all right.
My number 8, we're already at number 8, and you talked about it earlier this episode, and that is Fruitville Station. I think I liked this a lot more than you did, but something about this story just really resonated with me. Not that I can relate to it on a personal level, but the way that it depicted this tragedy, and it made Michael B. Jordan's character into this dynamic person who was not an angel by any means. He had a lot of faults. He was, he had a lot of issues. He lacked responsibility, but he was just a person. And I think it really sold you who he was, and it put a face on this tragedy. And it wasn't just using the tragedy for melodrama or to try to throw it in your face. I think there was saying a lot about basically the struggle he was under and and things. And I think too, what really makes this work is Michael B. Jordan. His performance is phenomenal. He's very captivating. He's really charming, but at times you can see that edge to him, and he can turn on it on a dime, and you can tell that he might be fun loving, he might be happy go lucky in moments, but there's more to it than that. And I think that is what makes it work more so than anything. It's just, and also talking about endings, a very emotional ending to that as well. I know a lot of people thought it was a little bit on the nose in a few areas, especially there's a scene with a dead dog. And I could understand that, and I think maybe a more seasoned director would maybe pull things back a little bit. This being the first time this guy's ever directed, I think maybe it was a little over enthusiastic in certain areas, but I don't know. To me, those moments were overshadowed by just brilliance on other areas, especially, like I said. The cast overall too is really good too, not just Jordan. I think he's surrounded by some strong actors, and there's a sense of realism to it as well. So
I thought it definitely felt real. I thought Michael B. Jordan was really good in it. I thought that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the film overall. Don't get me wrong. I think it is one of the year's best films. I guess my only problem with it was, in a way, the way it ended. I thought they had this really emotional ending going, and I'm not necessarily... Sometimes it's necessary because there's not another way to do it, but sometimes I feel like just throwing text on the screen to explain a bunch of stuff that happens afterwards, to me, left me unsatisfied. Because they did such a good job in building the emotion. They did such a good job in building the momentum and really getting you to be attached to what's going on and to feel what they want you to feel, that I feel like they have this, obviously this atrocity that happens that we're all aware of, and they do a good job of painting that. But then, like, maybe it was just selfish of me, but I wanted to get a little more of the movie to satisfy what was said in those lines at the end. In like the caption and the dialogue that was put on the screen. I don't know. I just wasn't ready for it to end without getting a little more resolution through the actual film.
I could see that. I guess what the ending I'm speaking of specifically is more so
what's leading up to that.
Yeah, like the shower scene. And
Yeah.
To me, what I liked about like how that ended, I think it places you in that situation and doesn't give you like an answer. And I guess I kind of like that, because in that situation, I think there aren't any easy answers, and there's no way to really clarify or get to any sort of justice per se, or any.
Right.
So
Well, I think for me, then I would have been more satisfied if they just ended it that way.
Yeah, I could see that. I think sometimes by bringing in the real life people, sometimes it I don't know.
It wasn't even so much that bringing in the ending people. It was I don't know. I just felt it was too much that they were just bypassing by putting text on the screen, which I don't have a problem with reading stuff, but I just sometimes feel like maybe there's a better way to do that, or just to leave it unsaid and let you search out what happened, or I don't know. Mm-hmm. There was something about the ending that I didn't quite feel fit with the emotion that I was getting for all the other parts of the movie. But still, like I said, one of the year's best films by far.
Okay. And so what is your number 8?
All right, number 8, another one of the Best Picture nominations, I guess. Call me a sheep. I'm just following what they tell me to say. But I'm going to go with number 8 as the Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, that film was just unique. Obviously set the record for the most cusses in the film, or the most times an F word was used. I just thought, even though I'm not, like I said, I wasn't like just drooling over Leonardo DiCaprio's performance like some other people were. I mean, it still is a good performance, but then again, it's the same, as I said, in somewhere else, it seems to me it's the same character he's played like 4 or 5 times now in his career. But Jonah Hill and the cast around him was fantastic. I thought it did a really good job of not taking someone, obviously a lot of these films this year are based on real life things, but it didn't take that and glorify it. It did a good job of painting this excessive lifestyle and making it seem as appealing as it would to his character, Jordan Belfort, but then at the same time showing the other side of it and showing how reckless and immature and dangerous living that lifestyle could be. There's some great scenes in it. There's some comedy. There's a little bit of everything. And I just thought, overall, if we were going to take a look at some of the films that for me were in that same vein or that same genre, I thought it was the more deserving film compared to some of the other ones, which I'll save for talking about in the honorable mentions. But I just thought it was a notch above some of those other ones.
Alrighty, yeah. It was sure probably one of the most controversial movies of the year. But did you see that someone got a clip and they tied together all the F words into one long YouTube clip? Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Hilarious. All right, and you talked about you being a sheep and following along with the Best Picture nominees. Well, I'm right there with you. And my number 7 is a Best Picture nominee, and rightfully so. And I know maybe people would have this higher, and I think most years I probably would have, but it's just that strong of a year. And one of the first films we actually the very first film we talked about in MWIRE Weekly, and that is Gravity. To me, this legitimizes the theater experience more so than anything I saw this year. On the technical side, it's just amazing. That opening shot, you did not get a better moment in the film this year. Alfonso Cuarón showing like he can direct like nothing else. Sandra Bullock giving one of the best performances that she's ever given, and it's just, to me, when people talk about like why do you go to the movies, not just watch them at home, well, something like Gravity comes along and you can see why. There's such a scale to it. The 3D was actually effective, and for the first time, I'm like, yeah, you can actually, but maybe not for the first time, but this goes to me with the very sacred ground of the few films that make 3D work, more so than anything else. And it's a spectacle, but makes a spectacle into a good thing. So yeah, I can't wait to see this movie again. And I'm luckily going to probably get a chance to see it in the theater again, which I'm really excited about. And if you've not seen Gravity, do so, because it, to me, makes you realize, yes, you can make a film that is a disaster film, but do it in a smart and intelligent way. And I think it proved that. So
yeah, there's not much arguing Gravity's place as one of the best films of the year. That's for sure.
All right. So what is your number 7?
Number 7 for me was a late entry. I already had my top 10 actually picked out, and then I saw this film, and I had to make a way for it to fit in there. Talk about a star-studded cast here: Meryl Streep, Julia Roberts, Ewan McGregor, Chris Cooper, Abigail Breslin, Benedict Cumberbatch, Juliette Lewis, Dermot Mulroney, Sam Shepard. It's August Osage County. I just, again, like I said earlier on, it's so real for me. It's not real to the point where it becomes unreal, if that makes any sense. They don't go so overboard that it becomes unreal. There's just, I don't know, maybe it's, I think all of us have experiences with dysfunctional relationships or dysfunctional family things going on, not necessarily to this level, but at least me, I guess. I don't know. I can relate to certain parts of this, and it's just, maybe just for Meryl Streep's performance alone makes it deserving. Obviously, Julia Roberts was nominated as well. I thought at times Julia Roberts was fantastic in this film. There was one sequence where I thought it was a little bit fake, but other than that, I thought she was phenomenal as well. But up and down, I mean, just listening to the cast I just spewed out, I mean, that's some power right there. I think the guys kind of get overshadowed a little bit, but Chris Cooper and Benedict Cumberbatch, Sam Shepard, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze about or whatever. But I just thought this was a really good film. I thought anybody that likes this type of it reminds me of a way, as the same things that I kind of liked about The Descendants, and in a different way, I guess, Up in the Air. But just, I can't say anything else but just being real. And it really resonated with me, and I thought it deserved to be in the top 10. Yeah,
I'm really upset I didn't get to see that. So hopefully we'll be able to check that out soon. But very, very cool. All right. And talking about Best Picture nominees, that trend continues with my number 5. And where are we up to number 5? I'm sorry, my number 6.
Yes.
Skipping a number. My number 6, and that is brought up already today. But my number 6 is Captain Phillips. Again, Paul Green. You said a lot about it already. Greengrass's direction is great. you hear that term like edge of your seat excitement, and that to me defined that term this year. Tom Hanks, like we mentioned, showing an amazing performance. The finale of this movie is just brilliant on so many levels, and that final 10 minutes or so, it's just acting at its finest. It's just amazing. And two, it's just there's a certain way Greengrass has to do with these docudramas to take a real life situation and fit it into a movie and make it still feel real, like he did with like United 93. And even with Tom Hanks, like the biggest movie star ever, like I never felt I was seeing Tom Hanks. I felt like I was seeing Captain Phillips. So I think that's a testament to not only Greengrass, but Hanks as an actor. So I can't wait to rewatch this again. It was such an amazing ride, so very emotional. I also liked how, with the ending, some people see it as this moment of triumph. Some people feel like it's more of a melancholy moment. I think that's a good example of a good director who knows how to keep an even keel approach when he does his movies. So, yeah, not much more to say about Captain Phillips as my number 6. So, how about you? What's your number 6?
I'm gonna go a different direction here, I guess, with my number 6, and that is with what not only was probably the best, well, not probably, but not only what was the best animated film for the year, but I have a feeling once the decade's over, we're going to be talking about it as one of the, if not the best animated film of the decade, possibly. But it will be in that top 10 discussion as well, and that's Frozen from Disney. Outside of the original Despicable Me, there hasn't been an animated film I've liked this much since then, or of that level, probably in the last 10 years. I just thought Frozen was excellently done. Was it perfect? No. Was it? Was there? I mean, I would put maybe another. I think it was 1 or 2 songs away from being even that much more epic. But just the feel, like Disney had finally got it right, and somehow touched upon some earlier greatness. And Idina Menzel was just phenomenal. Kristen Bell. Was surprisingly good. You had those. What it did for me is it touched on a lot of different things of past Disney films that I liked. The music was reminiscent to, like In the Beast, Little Mermaid, Lion King, Aladdin type time period. Having something based on the Snow Queen reminds me of how, back in the day with Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, how they, picked some of those characters and featured them. You had the comic relief with the snowman and the horse, which is similar to a lot of different things, almost like a Timon and Pumbaa, or some different characters that we've seen throughout the years. I don't know. It just had a lot of different things that touched on different things that I liked about other Disney films, and to me, it was just a refreshing breath there amongst animated films. When we're getting a lot of sequels, we're getting a lot of 5, 6, 7 films in a franchise, and to me there's not much you can say bad about it, although I would probably add, like I said, 1 or 2 more songs, so it wasn't just the 2 or 3 that it was a little stronger in that respect. But yep, that would be my number 6.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was probably easily the best animated movie of the year, not seeing The Wind Rises. And yeah, it was just great seeing Disney doing a great movie again. So, yeah. And a lot of those songs are sticking with me even more. The Let It Go song is pretty fantastic, along with a few others. So, no complaints from me on that end. All right. My number 5, again, sticking with the trend of Best Picture nominees. I feel like I'm being somewhat of a, like you said, being a lamb just following the crowd. But I don't think you can really argue against this choice. If anything, you may argue should be higher. And that is, again, 12 Years a Slave, Stephen Queen's epic masterpiece. I would say if there is any movie that is going to be looked at as the best movie to come out this year, 10, 15 years down the road, people are probably going to point to 12 Years a Slave. For its subject matter, for its direction, its performances are all fantastic. Great cinematography. The score by Hans Zimmer is one of the year's best. It's one of those movies. I hear a lot of people saying it's an amazing movie I never want to watch again, and I could understand that because of how brutal it is. But to me, just the filmmaking makes me want to return to it. And we talked about it a lot when we talked about 12 Years a Slave. But that famous, almost hanging scene, which I think we all agree is probably the best, if not one of the best scenes of the year, just in what it says and how it like encapsulates that time period in just one brief moment. But yeah, to me, it's one of those movies that will definitely stick with you. And like I said, it's number 5 on my list, but I could see this being the movie people go to say, yeah, that was 2013 at its best. So, all right. How about you? What is your number 5?
Starting in the last half here, my number 5 is one that you've already talked about a little bit, so we're definitely making the Academy feel like they got it right here. My number 5 is going to be Gravity. If I was strictly to base this on story and plot and those types of factors, I would probably rank some of the ones we've already talked about ahead of it. But from a pure technical standpoint, from a visual standpoint, from a theater experience, that was unlike anything that I've ever experienced before, and from an acting standpoint, this is definitely deserving. You already said a lot about it, but I would just plead to anyone, if you have not seen it and there's a theater near you that is bringing it back out for the Oscar season or for whatever reason, you need to see this in the theater before you don't have a chance to. Take advantage if you missed out the first time and go see it, because it's definitely worth it to see in the theater. Like I said, this is there's very few films. If I was to say, make a list of like the top 5 most unique theater experiences, this would obviously be in there. Just a visual masterpiece. For sure.
Obviously, I loved it as well. All right, and number 4, finally breaking the Best Picture nomination trend, but maybe it should have been not nominated, and that's one we talked about earlier today. And it is Inside Llewyn Davis. I think I liked this a lot more than you did. And there's so much I love about this movie, and of course starts with the music. It's just the performances here, the music performances are all fantastic. I've been listening to the soundtrack on repeat for such a long time now, and I think there's something about the Coen brothers that know how to craft a story that's so full and rich, yet it feels like nothing happened. I actually saw a lot of breakdown of the story of Inside Llewyn Davis and how it kind of explains everything that happened and its meaning behind everything. And I think it's a great article. I think I'll post in the show notes, and it just shows you just that you may think, oh, nothing's really happening here. There's no change taking place, but it really puts it in perspective. And Oscar Isaac is fantastic. His musical skills are on full display. The cinematography, it's great. It has like a black and white feel to it, without being completely black and white. So there's a lot to it that I really love, and I love visiting that world of the 1960s and how the Coen brothers can make a period piece without it feeling like a period piece. Like everything just feels old and rustic. So it could be happening today or 30, 40 years ago, unlike something like American Hustle that just wears its genre or wears its decade on its sleeve. Like everyone is just full of 70s gear. But yeah, I mean, the Coen brothers I probably wouldn't put it up there in the top echelon of Coen brother films because that is like the holy grail of filmmaking. But to me, it is one of my favorite movies of the year for sure. So
I'm definitely looking forward to the article you're posting. I'll read that and hopefully come away with an even better appreciation of the film. I don't know. I don't think it, like you said, it doesn't stand up to some of the other Coen films. I thought Oscar Isaac was amazing. I thought a lot of the scenes were amazing. I guess I just need to have a better appreciation of the story overall. But I can definitely see it being in a lot of people's top 10s. All right, so you broke the trend there. I guess I'll go in the same vein and pick one that I think should have been nominated, even though it wasn't. And that would be my number 4, which would be Saving Mr. Banks. I don't know. Something about this really stuck with me. I was worried that I was going to get too hyped up for this when I go in with too high of expectations, because I really was intrigued about the idea of making a film that delves into the inner workings of how a beloved property like Mary Poppins was made. There was some reservations on which direction they would go, and I wasn't sure I was going to, be a fan of it or not. But going away from it, I really did enjoy it. I thought the acting was phenomenal by Emma Thompson. I thought Tom Hanks was probably the only person that they could have picked to play Walt Disney. I thought Colin Farrell delivered a surprising performance. You get like a side part by Paul Giamatti. Brad Whitford, Jason Schwartzman. I mean, there was good acting throughout that. I can understand why a lot of people do have problems with the film or might not rank it as high as I am ranking it, but I just really enjoyed how they went about telling this story. Not saying they didn't cut some corners or make things look a little maybe different than they might have been, but overall, I just first of all, I really enjoyed the and we talked about this in the episode about this, but when Emma Thompson was interacting with Richard and Robert Sherman, the music composers, or the screenwriter Don DeGrady, I enjoyed the flashbacks and how they did that. I thought I wouldn't be a fan of that, but I thought the way they weaved that together and kind of gave, without hitting you over the head, kind of gave you some of the insight into why things were happening, and just kind of to learn that aspect of what was going behind the scenes in the writing of Mary Poppins, etc. I just enjoyed the film. Like I said, I can totally understand other people not having it in its top 10, but for me personally, I thought it was worthy of being in there, and I thought it stood above some of the other films that I was thinking about.
Yeah, we talked a great deal about that, Saving Mr. Banks. You can check that out a few episodes ago, and to me, like you said, one of the biggest surprises to me, I thought that might be almost like a fluff piece, but it really wasn't that at all. It was a lot deeper than that, and I think the flashback elements really worked well, and Emma Thompson was fantastic. So well deserved in your top 10. It didn't quite make mine, but it's not far off for sure. And though I broke the Best Picture trend, I'm going to go back to it. So, but I think again, I did not expect this to make Best Picture nominee, but I'm glad it did because it's deserving. It's the movie that if I was going to go to pick one that I want to be watched right now the most, it is this one, and that is Nebraska. Directed by Alexander Payne, starring Bruce Dern. And there's so much I love about this movie. It's so welcoming. I love the score. I love Bruce Dern as this character. He's just so disheveled. The opening moment just tells you so much about the character. I love the black and white use. It just fits the film so well. I love the dry humor, the sensibilities really suit my personal favorite type of comedy, and I think I probably love this movie more than I should because of that. There's so much I can relate to on this movie on different levels. The character of the Bruce Dern plays, just his mannerisms, and a lot of his family members remind me of a lot of family functions I've been to, and I think a lot of people have been to. And it's like I said, it's just a welcoming movie that in some ways, some people look at it as a cynical take that's making fun of the Midwest or the more simple folk. And I really don't think that at all. I think it's more a personal tale that really gets into people who really understand that culture and kind of appreciate it on different levels. So I just love that movie so much. And I'm surprised it's not higher, but there's just so much movies that came out this year. And I don't know. If you've not seen Nebraska, I know it's not been in a lot of places. It's only a limited release, but I would say definitely check it out. Don't be scared because it's black and white, because you forget that and it ends up fitting that. And also, Will Forte, who's surprised me. His performance isn't amazing, but he actually gave a pretty good performance, and I forgot that he was just a comedian. So.
And if I had to pick one film that was the closest one that I was about to go see that I just did not get a chance due to weather and a bunch of other circumstances that just prevented me from seeing this movie, this was the one film that I really wanted to see before I came up with this list that I was not able to see. But I will be eventually watching this, and like you said, that may change my top 10 and reverse some things around. But definitely a lot of praise for Nebraska, and that seems like it's well deserved. So look forward to seeing that one eventually.
Awesome.
Going into my number 3, I will break my trend there, or continue it, I guess, since I had Saving Mr. Banks last time, about one that's not Oscar nominated, at least not for Best Picture. And I can preface this by saying I do this a lot, where I have a film that I like way more than anybody else in the world seems to like, and I'll do that again here. It did get. I believe it got one Oscar nomination for the score from John Williams. Like I said, I realized that Rotten Tomatoes, it only has a 50%, which is not very good. And I think Metacritic is 53. So again, I'm building this up way too much, and most people are not going to like this film. But The Book Thief was my number 3 film of the year. I was just going into this on a whim. I didn't even have any opinions of it whatsoever. I was just going to the movies one day, and this is the one that I ended up going to see, and I came out of it just really pleased. I thought Jeffrey Rush and Emily Watson were fantastic, and I thought the acting by the couple of the foreign actors, which really hadn't done many widely released American films at this point in their young careers, I thought they were fantastic. Maybe it's part of me that kind of likes the time period and World War II, etc. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of films, a lot of books about that time period, and I just kind of liked what they did here. I can't say a whole lot about it because I still don't want to spoil it, because I have a feeling a lot of people haven't seen it that are listening to this. But maybe I'm crazy, but I just really enjoyed the film. So Book Thief was my number 3 film for the year.
I have yet to catch up with that one. Unfortunately, that is not in theaters near me, so I'm going to have to wait for it to hit home media. But I'm looking forward to it. So
you can tell me how wrong I am at that point.
You never know. Yeah, I mean,
or at least tell me why I shouldn't like it, and that'll make more sense to me.
Hey, at least 50% of the critics like it. So
Had a good musical score.
Yeah, I mean, apparently, yeah. You can't do wrong with John. I didn't even realize John Williams did that, so that does have me even more intrigued.
Yeah.
You talked about a movie that you like seemingly more than anyone else, and that's kind of the same thing with my number 2. You talked about not having expectations for the movie, and again, that's what I had going into this. I really knew nothing about it. I just kind of saw it on demand one day and wanted to check it out because the description interested me, and I thought, like, hey, this seems like it could be kind of good. And that movie is The Selfish Giant. We talked about it a few weeks ago, and I don't know, something about this movie I just really love. It's, in a lot of ways, I think it depicts childhood in a realistic fashion. I think the characters feel legitimate, and there's an emotional impact there. There's a sense of tragedy. It's, for those that haven't seen it, it's just a story about these 2 kids growing up. I believe it's in Ireland. I'm not sure exactly, but they don't have the easiest life in the world. They come from families that don't have money. They're having trouble in school, and they kind of end up finding the scrapyard that they end up using to get cash. And there's this relationship they build with a guy who owns the scrapyard, and all these things happen, and eventually some sort of tragic accident occurs. Eventually, and what I will say about this movie, I just think it says a lot without saying a lot. It talks about how it depicts, I think, poverty in a realistic fashion without being judgmental. Like, these characters are doing things that are not atypical moral, basically. They're doing some things that people would question that are not right, but they're doing it to survive. And I think it gets into how all these different systems have failed these kids, their parents, their school, the community as a whole. But it doesn't really hammer it home. And like I said, I think the key to me is just the characters and the emotional impact that it builds. And I feel like I'm really watching real people, and something about that. And I think it also looks beautiful in a way, in a weird way. There's a lot of these shots of you see like this horses grazing in this yard with a bunch of power lines, and I know something about that juxtaposition that really worked. And it's just always really just dreary, and I think it's always raining nearly all the time, or you don't see the sun at all. But I don't know, it's something about it just really hit me, and I've loved it. I've been trying to champion it because I really don't hear much people talking about it, but I don't think people are going to love it nearly as much as I did, but I think it's at least a solid film to check out. So
I would say that anybody that is a film buff, or that likes films, or that watches more than 20 or 30 films a year should probably seek this out and watch it. It's definitely worth a watch. It's unique. There are a lot of things to like about it. It didn't resonate as much for me as it did for you, but that's, I think, more so just on personal level, personal experiences, or what strikes a chord on us more. I don't necessarily have like bad things to say about it. It just didn't rank as high for me. But I think any movie fan should make sure they seek this out and watch it.
For sure. So we're counting down here. We're almost near the end. So what is your number 2?
My number 2 is one that you have already talked about. I'm actually somewhat surprised that it did slip as much as it did on your list. Obviously, like you said, there's been a lot of films that compete with it, though. My number 2 would be 12 Years a Slave. I think that it's very hard to beat this film this year. And I don't think it would have been beat if the year had ended a few weeks earlier. But I don't know, 12 Years a Slave just the directing, I honestly think that it was probably the best directed film of the year. The choices that he made and the way that he shot scenes, the angles that he showed, the duration of certain scenes we already talked about. Obviously, probably one of the best scenes of the year. The acting performances, but it did all of this stuff, and it told what could be seen as an epic historical tale here in an event. But it did all that in at the same time a very powerful way and a very subtle way, and that's very hard to do. It balanced things so perfectly that it never came across feeling like it was hitting you over the head. It never came across feeling like it was a Hollywood version of this story. It never came across feeling fake or feeling like it had an agenda that it was trying to shove down your throats. Like I think he honestly had the balance of what he was doing down perfectly. And we talked a lot about it in our MWIRE Weekly show, where this was the main attraction, so you can go back and listen to that if you want me to expand on this more. But honestly, to me, the best picture race this year should be a two film race, and this should be one of those two films.
Yeah, I can't disagree more, or not disagree, agree more. Yeah, I thought it'd be a lot higher too, and like I said, maybe on a filmmaking standpoint, it probably should rank higher. But I guess what it comes to this list, it's a combination of best and favorite, so I think that maybe have caused it.
Yeah, I think both of our individual tastes are coming out a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing, because we're all picking really great movies. In my opinion, they're all like some of the best films of the year. But yeah, definitely can tell what we've already learned about ourselves as we're going through here.
All right, so it all comes down to this: the number one movie of the year. It's always hard to give anything that number one movie of the year, because it's just like ready for hyperbole, people. But I think this year there's so many. You could say 12 years. You could say pretty much anything up to this that I've mentioned or we've mentioned. But my number one is a film that I don't know. I haven't seen anything quite like it in, I think, some time. Its acting performances were fantastic. Again, score was great. Direction. It created a world that I just wanted to visit in different ways. And it's a movie we talked about just a week ago, and that is Her, Spike Jonze's film. Spike Jonze's movie about that says so much about today and our addiction to technology, but such more than that. Gets into relationships, our connections with one another, and how it could be one of the best love stories of the year, and you only see one of the participants of it. It just blows my mind. And Scarlett Johansson, I never thought she could emote or be so likable and have such a personality like she does in this. And I don't know, it's just, I keep thinking about this movie more and more, and I can't wait to see it again. And there's just so much you can take away from it. I think you can take away so many different meanings, so many different thoughts from each scene. I think some people have said, you can look at one specific moment and you can think it's saying this about our society, or someone can say, no, it's just talking about these characters. And I think that is a sign of a strong screenplay. If this does not win best screenplay, I think it'd be absolutely crazy. But yeah, I cannot say enough about Her, and we can check out last week's episode and we go more in depth with it. But for me, my number one was The Selfish Giant for some time, but after I saw Her, there was no question that it had to be my number one. So.
And like you said, you guys can definitely check out last week's episode. We go a lot more in detail with our thoughts on that film, so you should check that out as well. As well as we've had episodes on a lot of the films that we've been talking about. As for me and my number one, like I said, I really feel, I understand that there's 9 nominees, and I get that Gravity, from a technical standpoint, was amazing. Captain Phillips, what we said about that. I get why The Wolf of Wall Street is on there. I understand why all the films are on the list outside of the one or two that I haven't seen, but I really can't justify any other film besides 12 Years a Slave or Her winning for Best Picture. To me, that those two are just in a league of their own. Her was my number one pick as well. So even though we disagree on other parts of the list, we will agree on our number one film of the year, and the world will end tomorrow. But like you said, it's just something that is completely unique, something that should not have worked for a lot of different ways, and yet it works so perfectly. I don't want to repeat everything we said last episode, but it did. It created a world that didn't hit you over the head with this is some futuristic world that exists that we're creating. It was like it was a believable futuristic world. It's touching on so many important concepts in today's world. And in the future of our world, so many things that can hit home and be related to for a lot of people. And although I respect everybody that has had other comments, I just disagree with some of the critiques that it was forceful, or that it was Spike Jonze shoving his agenda down and just speaking through the characters. I just disagree with that. I think these are real issues and real ideas that were dealt with in a perfect manner, and I can't say enough good about it. I thought about for a long time, like you said, you had Selfish Giant number one. I had 12 Years a Slave number ones from the week I saw it until Her came out, and then just the more I thought about it, I couldn't picture me not putting Her at number one. And I don't know how Joaquin Phoenix is not nominated for this.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm just gonna run down my top 10 again. Real quick before we get to honorable mentions. My number 10 was Before Midnight. Number 9, All Is Lost. Number 8, Fruitvale Station. 7, Gravity. 6, 12 Years a Slave. I'm sorry. 6, Captain Phillips. 5, 12 Years a Slave. 4, Inside Llewyn Davis. 3, Nebraska. 2, The Selfish Giant. And number 1, Her.
And my number 10 was number 10, Drinking Buddies. Number 9, Captain Phillips, like Dan. Number 8, The Wolf of Wall Street. Number 7, August Osage County. Number 6, Frozen. Number 5, Gravity. Number 4, Saving Mr. Banks. Number 3, The Book Thief. Number 2, 12 Years a Slave. And number 1, Her.
Okay. So what films, were your honorable mentions, anything that just missed your list?
If we were talking about films that I really considered that just didn't quite make the cut at the end of the day, and a lot of these I really debated with in the spot of Drinking Buddies or Captain Phillips, but I just couldn't put him there. Lee Daniels, The Butler, I know there's a lot of issues, and I know I maybe liked it a little more than some, but I definitely considered it. American Hustle, but to me what it comes down to with both American Hustle and I'll mention Dallas Buyers Club in the same sentence, even though they're not necessarily, I'm not saying they're the similar films, but when I think about The Wolf of Wall Street, American Hustle, and Dallas Buyers Club, there was only room for one of those, and it was The Wolf of Wall Street. Maybe on a second viewing, maybe I would shift that opinion, but I just thought Wolf of Wall Street separated itself a little bit from American Hustle and Dallas Buyers Club, and I just had a few issues with both of those. I'd also mention Pacific Rim from another, just unique and visual appealing blockbuster type film in a year where it was hard to do a good blockbuster. I thought it kind of reigned supreme. And then in the same way as I talked about The Butler, I talk about Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. They both had their failings, but they were still, to me, decent films. And then in a way of talking, we did, as far as coming-of-age films, I think The Kings of Summer, Mud, and The Spectacular Now were all films that I considered whether they should be there or whether Drinking Buddies should be there. And I really go back and forth amongst those four films, but I really enjoyed all four of them a lot. The only other two I'll mention, if I was going to talk about a comedy, I really think The Way, Way Back, I put The Way, Way Back in there with Spectacular Now, Mud, Kings of Summer, Drinking Buddies. I thought those are all kind of similar films, and they were all decent. And the other one that I had in my thought process, but didn't really come anywhere close compared to the other ones, would be World War Z. I thought that was a surprise, so I kind of put that up there.
Nice. I didn't include documentaries in mine. I have a separate list for that's on the site. But if I did, I think The Act of Killing was probably would be there. Some other films, some smaller movies that one's called In the House. It's a French movie that I said it's meta on top of meta without being meta. It's about this English teacher and this relationship he has with a student who's writing a story about his classmate. It's really interesting. It's available on Netflix. In the House. I would advise checking that out. I just enjoyed it. You talked about Mud. That was my number one halfway through the year. We talked about Ain't the Body Saints. Also The Hunt. I really love that movie, especially Matt Mikkelsen's performance. Leviathan's another documentary I really enjoyed. Stories We Tell. Pacific Rim, like you said, probably the best summer film this year. Also really enjoyed Stoker. Came out earlier than year. It's from the director of the original Old Boy, and I know a lot of people didn't like that movie, but I don't know. I love the atmosphere. To me, it was one of the most beautiful films of the year, editing wise. Also, Prince Avalanche with Paul Rudd and Emil Hirsch. The other Captain Phillips, Hijacking, which is a Swedish film about a boat being hijacked. A lot different than Captain Phillips. Don't go in thinking it's a edge of your seat thrill ride. It's more of a drama. And also, you mentioned American Hustle up there, and another documentary, We Steal Secrets, the story of WikiLeaks, which was pretty good. I was kind of surprised that didn't get a nomination as well. But yeah, a lot of great movies. What I find interesting is no comic book movies between us. Not many summer films besides Pacific Rim. So, like I said, but which is interesting. I think this year might be a little bit different. But
I thought, looking overall, I thought there was a couple things that were telling to me, and not that it ever changes too much, but with me. But you said there's no comic book films, which number one, sometimes I do have one sneak in there that I feel is really good. Obviously, like Avengers and some other ones that we've had that I have put in the top 10. So that I didn't even have one that I would list in my honorable mentions this year. So looking back at the year, I think that's telling. I guess even though some people may have different definitions of comedies than I do, I don't think any of the films that I talked about right there were comedies. Whether, I know some people would call some of those comedies, but I don't think there was any comedies that I talked about as far as the top 10 or the honorable mentions. So I think it's somewhat telling of that genre that the comedies that we see, quote unquote, these days are more of a blend of a different genre. You don't really get that straight comedy. We haven't recently that has been just a spectacular film. I mean, to me, the best comedy that I saw this year was probably This Is the End, and I wouldn't even put that in my top 20. So, I mean, that romantic comedies, we're not really seeing a lot of. Fantasy films, horror films. There's a lot of genres that seem to be lacking, whereas movies, dramas based on real life events, we talked about a lot of those. 12 Years a Slave in a way is like that. Saving Mr. Banks is about a real life event. The Book Thief in a way. Wolf of Wall Street, that's based on a real person. Captain Phillips, Lee Daniels, The Butler. A lot of these films, Dallas Buyers Club, Fruitvale Station, Mandela. I mean, there's been a lot of films this year that were based on real events, real people, that it ended up being real good. And then the other thing was for me the strong showing of those coming of age films. Kings of Summer, Mud, The Spectacular Now, The Way Back. Even The Selfish Giant, you could consider that coming of age film. So it's interesting to see this year which genres reigned supreme and which ones didn't, and if that's a sign of the times, if that's something that we can expect to continue. I would have to look back to see how long that's been the trend, but definitely interesting to see all the things that were based on real events or real people or true, somewhat true stories, and then the coming of age films be really the highlight this year. Yeah,
definitely. And next week, speaking of what's happening in 2014. Next week we'll be talking about, the movies of 2014, what we're looking forward to. Looks like it'll be an interesting year. I know a lot of people are talking about 2015 and what that has in store, but 2014 is not shabby itself, and we'll hopefully get in that in more detail next week when we
So we've told you what to watch for 2013. Now we're going to tell you what to look forward to. And I think it's good. I think it's cool to kind of have that look before the year gets too far underway and to see, what kind of stuff we're looking forward to. And we'll kind of have a couple other new things, new little twists that we're going to do along the way too. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, for sure. I guess one thing we didn't talk about, were there any films this year that you didn't get a chance to catch up with that you, besides the ones you've already mentioned, that you hopefully will soon?
Obviously there was a few that made your top 10 that I haven't seen that I definitely want to see. I want to see Nebraska. I want to see All Is Lost. I want to see the entire Before series, Blue Jasmine. I guess I should see Philomena. There was a few that I just thought were interesting that I never watched, but I don't know if I'll get around to those or not. But definitely those ones that I just mentioned, I'll be trying to fit in when time permits.
Yeah, I heard a lot of great things about Blue is the Warmest Color. Haven't been able to check that out. Also, Short Term 12. Haven't been able to see that, and a few others. So hopefully catch with those two. Blue Jasmine. I haven't seen that.
I'd be interested to see eventually your takes on August Osage County and The Book Thief.
Yeah, hopefully I'll check those out soon. I might actually see Osage County very shortly. So
excellent.
All right. So before we depart, we'll take a look at what's coming out next week. And of course, nothing really huge. It is kind of the doldrums of this year. We mentioned this is the time a lot of people are going to check out the Oscar films they missed, but there is some stuff coming out in the theaters. Most notably, I guess you'd say notably, I, Frankenstein is coming out. Yeah, that is interesting for sure. Gimme Shelter, we talked about that a few weeks ago, opening up limited release. A few other things as well as Gloria. I heard good things about that. It's a Chilean film that was actually on the short list for Best Foreign Film at the Oscars. But anything else coming up this upcoming week that you're looking forward to?
No.
Do you think I, Frankenstein has any chance of dethroning Ride Along as number one in the box office?
I'm gonna go with no. Surprisingly, I think. Wow. I don't know if there's going to be anything that's going to make that much money next week.
No.
I think it's going to be more of a spread the love type week where a lot of films make a little bit of money and nothing makes a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah. And on the DVD Blu-ray front, some good stuff coming out this week. Most notably, Blue Jasmine, like we mentioned, Captain Phillips, Charlie Countingman with Shia LaBeouf. Also, In a World. I've heard a lot of great things about In a World. It's about, for those that are in the voice acting, Kevin, so you actually might like that because it's about someone trying to make it as a voice announcer for the movies. And also, Machete Kills. You got to watch that before you can determine your best films of the year for sure. And I don't know if this is a spin-off from Batteries Not Included, but it's in Instructions Not Included, coming out this week coming up. Any of those films you feel like you'll be picking up soon or checking out?
Possibly Blue. And I'll probably pick up Captain Phillips at some point. I don't know if I'll do it right away unless it's on a good sale, but I'll add that to my collection at some point, obviously.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm probably going to buy Captain Phillips just because I want to see it again. And I just really want to catch Blue Jasmine because I've heard so much about it. I don't probably wait for it to get to Redbox, though.
Yeah.
But anyways, now finishing off with our credit conversation. With the Oscars, we talked about asking you guys, what type of category would you add to the Oscars? What would you change? What do you feel is not getting the recognition that it should? We got a lot of different answers, and one that actually I'm going to steal because it's one that I thought of that somebody already came up with, and that is King of Kongs. He said, I guess he or she said, what about the best use of music? I know they have best music score and best original song. This is more for when the right song is used at the right moment. That's a skill only a few directors have, and I think it should be recognized when it happens. And as a fan of Martin Scorsese, like that, I completely agree with. I think there are times when people use songs other people have made, but use it in clever ways. There's something like Inside Llewyn Davis. Not all those songs are theirs. They're classic songs, but they use them in interesting ways that I think that should be nominated in some way. I just think that's a skill that is, like King of Cons mentions, is unique and not everyone has. And when it's used right, it really makes the moment work. So.
Yeah, and there were some other. Do you want to run down any of the other ones that people have suggested?
Oh, sure. There was a good amount. Some mentioned. I'm sorry. Geez, let me look here real quick.
I know one that I would selfishly think would be great, even though I don't ever see them ever doing this. But like we mentioned a couple different times, and obviously I made my own list of it. I think individual scenes would be an interesting thing to do, and I think maybe it would make people try a little harder to put more into every scene. But I think the best scene of the year is an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I agree that could be kind of cool too, just to see what moment really sold people, and it'd be kind of cool to seeing what scene people push for their movie, because when you put a movie in for Best Picture or whatever, you usually are you're campaigning for that movie. So I'd be interested in seeing like what scene people feel is the best in their film that they're campaigning for.
Me personally, the one that I would add in some way, shape, or form, and I don't know if the Oscars is the best place to do this, or maybe some of the other award shows, but I think the world of voiceover is painfully lacking in the award arena. And obviously, you have all the animated films, so you would always have those people that you could look at. It would also give you a platform for the likes of someone like a Scarlett Johansson from this year. And there's other films where voiceover happens, and I just think too often voiceover acting is not considered in the same vein as regular acting. And like we saw in Her, it's every bit as hard and as powerful when done right.
Agreed, and I could see that. I think that to me goes in maybe even another question about how the Oscars need to kind of adjust their regulations, because you talk about Scarlett Johansson, people mentioned like Andy Serkis for his work in the Planet of the Apes movies, and how those aren't recognized. And one other one I wanted to talk about was Caleb Browning, who talked about doing one for Best Casting Director. And I could see that. There's actually a documentary that came out earlier the year called Casting By that gets into that. I personally had before that no idea how much work a casting director does in making a movie, but it really makes
that's a really good, not to interrupt you, but that's a really good idea, and I think it would maybe make people think a little bit harder too about casting.
Yeah, I know. Looking at all the casting that we talk about, we can see that if you get it right, it's a hard thing to do. So. But Kevin, you said you mentioned a question already earlier this episode. I think it would be a great one to go over, because looking at our top 10s, there are a lot of films are not the most chipper movies in the world, so you kind of know where we stand on this. But I'd be curious in seeing what other people stand about the question you had earlier about escaping reality with movies.
Well, and I think just what I'd be interested in is why do you see movies? I guess. And I think everybody has different things. I think there's some people out there that strictly go to movies for the big blockbusters, the comic book movies, the just to have fun and just have that popcorn flick where you can just turn your mind off and just have fun with it. I think there are those people that like to escape into a different world, a different reality, and they like films that kind of feel the least real as possible. I think there's people, like at times myself, I guess, that I like to see something that is a reflection that I could relate to, is something that I feel is real. I mentioned some of the films like Descendants, Up in the Air, August Osage County, Fruitvale Station, in a way, just real stories. Because to me, that is the quickest way to hit me emotionally and get that emotional connection. So I'd just be interested to see why do people go and see movies? Not necessarily which types of films they avoid or whatever, but what draws them to want to see a film? What is the purpose that film plays, I guess, in their lives?
Interesting. Yeah, that'd be really cool to see, because I'm sure we'll get a lot of different response to that, because that is a good question. I think that's the most fundamental question of why we do this, really. So yeah, looking forward to that. So anything else before we bring this episode to a close?
No, I'm just looking forward to now closing. Obviously, we'll still talk about who actually wins the Oscars, but outside of that, we're basically closing the book on 2013 and turning our sights forward.
Yeah, so yeah, like you said, next week we'll be talking about 2014 films. We also have some other things planned for Geekcast Radio, possibly some awards talk that we're going to do ourselves. We're going to put our money where our mouth is, and we'll talk about more of that very shortly. But if you do want to get back to us, there are a number of different avenues for you to choose from. You can call the voicemail line at 502-526-5821. You can email us at feedback@geekcastradio.com. Just include in the subject line MWIRE Weekly, and you can visit the forums and episode posts at geekcastradio.com. Visit the Facebook page at Geekcast Radio, and also on Twitter we're at Geekcast Radio, #MWIRE. And Kev, what's your Twitter name?
At Optimus Solo.
And I am at Movie Revolt, and
I would also say maybe we could also just mention real quickly the Letterboxd website and how they can find us on there.
Yeah.
Because if you want to keep up with what we're watching on a daily basis and ratings and even some other reviews, you can catch us both on there too.
Yeah, my Twitter name, my Letterboxd name is also Movie Revolt. Is yours Optimus Solo on there as well?
Actually, no, it's not. I don't think. I think if you want to find me, it's Kevin1981.
Nice. So, yeah, if you're a movie fan, I would advise checking out Letterboxd. We've only talked about. We could probably talk more about that on another episode. But it's a great tool. I mean, you can use it as a social media aspect. You can use it as keeping track of the movies you watch. Great list tool, and I'll be posting on there my actual top 25 films of the year.
I'm glad you brought that up because I will also be making a post on Geekcast Radio with my I haven't decided on a specific number, but it's going to be somewhere between top 20 and top 40 films from the year. So I'll be posting that too.
Nice, and you can find those, and also have a written post for my top 10 movies of the year, as well as my top 10 documentaries, some of which I've talked about, many of which I haven't. But yeah, so there's a lot of different things coming out. A lot of great reflection on 2013 still to come. And like we said, we'll have plenty for you for this year. Looking forward to having a full year of MWIRE Weekly. It's been fun so far. It seems like we're pretty good at choosing movies because many of them that we've chosen ended up making the Best Picture nominee, making our top 10. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Definitely looking forward to a lot of what we've been doing so far in 2014, and some different things, and hopefully some stuff that you guys will appreciate and like. So.
For sure. So for now, we've been MWIRE Weekly, and remember, for all things movies, keep tuned to MWIRE Weekly. We'll see you next week.